The Corvallis business meeting, the Corvallis School District Board of Directors business meeting for April 8th, 2021 is called to order. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're willing and able, please join me to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. I want to welcome our audience who are joining us through the streaming or the recording. The school board meeting agenda will be presented and is shared in the description of the video, so you can look into the material as we discuss the business of today. I want to welcome everybody who's attending and also our attendance here. So today we have a full screen of great folks. And with that, I would like to actually start with introductions for everybody, our school board members and our guests from the Corvallis Public Foundation and also our student representatives. So let's start. How should we start? Let's go with, my name is Sami Al-Abdrabba. I'm the Corvallis School Board Chair. And Sarah?
My name is Sarah Finger McDonald. I am the Corval School Board Vice Chair.
Lahui?
Hi everyone, Lahui Whiteberry is she, her pronouns.
Jay?
Hi, Jay Conroy, school board member for about 2 more months.
Vince Adam?
Hi, Vince Adams, he has been on the board since 2013.
And from our board also, we do have Tina.
Hi, Tina Baker, pronouns they, them. I apologize about my video. I do not have enough bandwidth, so I won't be joining by video, but definitely by audio.
Thank you, Tina. Therese?
Hi, I'm Therese Jones. I use she and her, and like Tina, if I want to stay active in the meeting, it's better if I don't run my camera so I don't get dropped all the time.
Wonderful. Our students representatives from Corvallis High School.
Hi, my name is Ezra Hart, and I'm one of the representatives.
My name is Kristen Moon, and I'm the other representative.
And from College Hill.
I'm Jesse Martin. I'm the only College Hill representative.
And Crescent Valley High School.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm a junior. I use she, her pronouns, and I have been, this is my 2nd year and my last year as a CV school board rep.
Awesome. So I'll hand it over to Mike if you want to do the introduction. Oh, sorry. I missed you, Calvin. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No. I'm Calvin Carlowski. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a sophomore at CV, and this is my 1st year. So.
Wonderful. I'll hand it over to Mike if you want to introduce yourself and introduce the foundation board members and staff.
Thank you very much, Sammy. I'm Mike Sheets. I'm a past chair and still a board member of the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation. Leaf?
Thank you, Mike. I'm Leaf Gifford. I'm the executive director of the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation, and I use she, her pronouns. Mike, shall I choose somebody?
Sure.
How about Emily?
Let's move on, yeah.
Hi, I'm Emily Barton. I'm a trustee at the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I will call on Rick.
Hi, I'm Rick Wallace. I'm also a trustee on the board for the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation. Who's out there? Tammy?
Angela?
Hi, I'm Tammy Jakewith, and I sit on the board with the foundation, and I am the treasurer for the group.
How about now, Angela?
Hi, I'm Angela Hibbard. This is my 3rd year serving as a trustee on the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation. Is there anyone else I need to tag?
Gretchen.
Okay.
I'm Gretchen
you're
Morris, and
muted.
not anymore. I'm Gretchen Morris, and I'm a trustee on the Public Schools Foundation also.
Any other?
I think that's it for us,
trustees?
Sammy. Thanks.
All right, and we have from staff, Ryan.
Oh, yeah. So I'm Ryan Oss, I'm the superintendent, he, him pronouns. And great to have you all here tonight and looking forward to talking with the foundation about the work that's underway. And Melissa.
Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Harder, Assistant Superintendent in Corvallis School District.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And I want to acknowledge we do have more staff who will be introducing themselves during other agenda items. And I want to welcome everybody. And as you can see, we have an agenda, a big piece of our meeting today is a collaborative meeting with our partners in the Public Schools Foundation Board of Trustees. So welcome, and we're very excited to have you and to be meeting with you. So the next item on the agenda is our school board members' reports. Does any board member have a report to share? Lou?
I just wanted to let everybody know that the school board scholarship is live, and hopefully you all have had a chance to see that. It's actually on the Corvallis Public School Foundation webpage, and so that was a great partnership with you all to have that launched. And I just wanted to say that was live in case folk didn't know. And Vince and Jay, thanks for being great thought partners as we presented that to the board. And thanks to the foundation as well.
Thank you, Lou. Vince?
Thank you, Sammy. I just want to touch on my role as liaison to both of our associations. And I just wanted to say that that staff and labor have been meeting, working towards getting our kids back in school and doing it safely. And I just wanted to report to the board that those interactions continue to be very, very collaborative with students at the center. And not to, I'm not supposed to reveal details that happen, but this is a detail that I am gonna reveal because I think it really speaks to the values of our district and our education team. That on both sides of the negotiations, serving those students that can't come back to school for whatever reason, we call them cohort C. That was a non-negotiable item that both parties wanted to ensure that each and every kid in our district would have access to school. And that is not true across Oregon. There are some school districts that are choosing to, if you can't come to the building, then I'm sorry, you don't get educated. That's not how we do things here in Corvallis. I'm just very proud of both sides. Negotiations are always a little tense and difficult, but I'm just really proud of our teachers and our district and the way that they have been working together to meet the needs of our kids. And I'm not going to say any more because I think we're going to hear more from staff tonight.
Thank you, Vince. Any other board members with a report to share? I will share a couple of things in my capacity at the Caucus of Color of our School Board Members Association. I'm attending the National School Board Association Conference virtually, and it started earlier today and will go for 2 more days. NSBA's conference is just very rich with information and perspectives from school board members across the nation. So I look forward to probably write a short report and get some PDFs and presentations that I feel are relevant, and I'll share it with you all. It's very interesting and lots of engaging information. And the other reports also from the caucus, and I shared it with the school board members around OSAA's rules. There is some discussion happening between the caucus and the OSAA around how can we make sure the rules for our students, especially in volleyball, are inclusive and equitable. And I'm very pleased and encouraged by the partnership, and parts of it now they're allowing students who wear religious coverings effective immediately to be able to do that without requirements of bringing a waiver. And there are some developments as well for other issues as well. So with that, any other reports you want to share? See none. Let's go with the superintendent's reports.
All right, thanks, Sammy, and thanks, team. I just have a couple things I wanted to update you on that I think are important for you to know. One of them is a step forward. I think we have, over the years, one of the things I've heard at registration time has been, as I go through that process, the options around racial identity don't meet my child, who they are, and that I don't feel included when I go through that process, and I don't find who I am in that process regarding race and ethnicity. And so we have worked with the ESD over the last, probably the last 6 months, with Marcianne as one of our key collaborators, and also working with our parent group, our Delta group, to identify additional areas, racial identities that have been added to the registration process for this year. It also includes a write-in section, because the ESD who oversees our registration process will continue to take that feedback and expand that list. But right now it's grown to 22 different races. And so I think that that's a way that we make sure that kids and families feel included from the start, from when they come into our schools, as they begin to register to be a part of CSD. So for us, that's really something that we feel is impactful. The other thing about that is that because it's in our ESD system, schools in Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties all have those additional racial categories in their registration process as well. So it was something that came up here in Corvallis that we had heard that we're able to expand across our region. And so I feel really proud of that and excited that that is made available to our families as we begin registration for next school year. So I think that's a good positive step forward. A couple of other things I wanted to share with you. One of them is that we are anticipating, based on a survey that we did with families who have been in Corvallis Online for this school year, about a desire to continue in Corvallis Online. We had 60 families that said, first 60 students that said, yes, we want to continue. We also have 120 that were unsure or still on the fence. Based on those numbers, we want to make sure that that option becomes or continues to be available for next year. So more to come on that, but I just wanted you to know that based on what we're hearing from our families, we're still anticipating continuing to move to have kids back in school. At the same time, this is a system and a way that kids can access their education in a different manner. And for some of our families, they want to continue that. So we're going to want to continue that for them. So I wanted to provide you that update. Also, you may have seen in the Gazette Times the other day about the Hiroshima peace tree that was planted. Well, we also have a peace tree that's been planted here on this site, related to the work that was happening at Adams. And so we will have students come and talk about peace on, the date is, what's the date? 22nd. The 22nd of this month. And so if you are interested in attending, we'll send something out to the board, but it is a really cool opportunity to hear from our students, again, following social distancing guidelines and all of those requirements. But it's one of 45 trees that was grown from seeds of a tree that miraculously survived the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. So from that, these peace trees have grown, and we have one planted here on site. So it's a really special thing, and hopefully you can join us to learn more about that from our students and about peace. And I also wanted to take a moment just to share with you that last year, about this time, our Human Resources Director, Jennifer Duvall, received the Human Resources Leadership Award from the state Human Resources group called OSPA. And so that's because of her work here in this state and also around the nation as a regional representative for human resources directors in education across the country. And so today we surprised her a year later, still online, but a year later we surprised her. Her parents were able to join us, as well as her girls, as we recognized her and the work that she's done as a human resources leader in Oregon and across and in the country. So anyhow, I just wanted to share that with you. It was a great surprise, and teared up a little bit, and it was just a heartfelt moment. And then finally, we have new student artwork in the boardroom. So as you all know, and you can probably see from our OWL camera, there is new artwork around the space. And again, as we get closer to being back together in the space together, it just again reminds us of our students and the creativity our students have continued to display through this pandemic. And again, a recognition of our art teachers really from across the district who contributed this time to make this space, again, remind us of students. So with that, that's my report. I'll be providing you more information in our educational update, Melissa and I will, in regards to reopening our schools more extensively. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sammy.
Thanks, Ryan. Any questions for Ryan? Lou?
Hi, Ryan. That's super exciting news to hear about the demographic changes for the enrollment form. And I'm wondering if that's going to expand to the data reports eventually too, if that's maybe in the plans too. That was one question. And that's also exciting news about Corvallis Online for the students that have been thriving in that modality. And I'm wondering if there's conversations on how to keep students engaged with clubs and extracurriculars that are on how that's working. I don't know what it looks like right now, but when things are more in person, it would be a little bit different than everybody Zooming together. And I'm just curious what that might look like too, or if that's not determined yet. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Lou. So the first one, we still have the federal reporting component that we have to do. And so that won't change for us. But what I think is the potential with this is that local reporting will allow us better understanding of who our kids are. So I think that does it doesn't do it all, but it is a move in that direction as well. And then in terms of the Corvallis Online students, we're going to continue to work to find ways that students feel connected to our school district, regardless of how they're receiving their education. I don't have specifics yet for you on that, but that has been our philosophy all along since starting Corvallis Online, and how important that is to maintain those relationships.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. Vince?
I just wanted to also express, immense appreciation for adding open-ended categories at the very least, but then, an additional several more categories to make our demographics more inclusive. For whatever reason, the United States lags in this area. Other nations are way ahead of us in this respect. So it's really great to see your leadership on this. And I'm thinking about the future and the next year for the board. And I'm wondering if maybe we can have Lori Corliss talk to implications about how we will look at data, maybe at our annual retreat this summer, and go a little bit deeper into this once it gets settled in and we figure out what it looks like.
Yeah, thanks. And one of the things I would say is that for our ESD, our Educational Service District, who is not necessarily directly connected to schools, but serves school districts across our region, this was an area that they really jumped into and were excited to participate in, because this is an area that they feel like they can influence and impact equity in a positive way. And so I would like to just recognize the fact that this was important work for them too, that they helped to champion and really move us forward. When they heard the stories that we shared, they recognized the need and helped to make it happen. So that's been really powerful for them.
Thank you, Ryan.
I'll add my appreciation. I know at least one family that will be very appreciative of this work, and they've been asking for it for a while. So thank you, Ryan, for doing this work. I know some parents will be very grateful, and as we go into the registration period, this is very timely, and it couldn't happen without the partnership and strong collaboration with the ESD. So thanks for their superintendent and team, and thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll make sure they know.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll go to
But
our.
Sammy, actually, I do have a comment. I wasn't going to make it until later, but given the discussion around changing the way that we record racial groups and thinking about, this effort to be more inclusive, I actually did write a short statement I wanted to read along those lines, if that's okay.
Please go ahead, Terry.
I think it fits better here than it will later anyway. So I'll just read it because I wrote it down so that I wouldn't lose track of the topic, my point. I want to extend a gratitude to the unnamed community member who is unnamed because I did not obtain permission to name them, who brought to our attention that this evening concludes the Day of Remembrance of the Holocaust, a horrific display of the evil that fascism allows to be carried out against groups of people simply for their identity. Our only hope to see a future free of the targeted, deliberate violence for which the Holocaust is representative, though not exclusive, is to deepen our commitment to do the hard work of racial equity through deconstructing the strongholds of privilege and power that allow groups to be relegated to the margins and become vulnerable to the tyranny of xenophobia. As a community member, I am encouraged by those who will reach out to our school district and let us know they do not feel heard or represented. I regret that the timing of our meeting resulted in any community member who may have felt they had to choose between honoring participation in this remembrance and participating in civic engagement. I am committed to doing the hard work of decentralizing within our district processes and curriculum the privilege and perspective of specific identity groups at the expense of others. So thank you, unnamed person, for inviting the board and more specifically inviting me to reflect and reevaluate who may be left out of our conversations, who may be overrepresented in them. Thank you, Sammy, for giving me the opportunity to share that. It felt timely to the discussion at hand. And so I wanted to read that into the record for those that might be listening.
Thank you, Therese. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it fit.
Absolutely. Next item on the agenda is the students' representatives report. And let's start with college health.
Hi, I'm gonna turn off my video just in case I, glitch out. But we're excited to report that we're already 2 weeks in to having most of our kids in the school building. And I can say personally, from a student perspective, I've already seen a lot of kids really thankful and already working a lot better than they were at home. And it wasn't that hard for me, but just being in school and being there and communicating with the teachers again, it's really nice. And I didn't expect it to be so impactful, but we're just really grateful for that. We have all the kids in the building who are willing to come from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then we have a Zoom meeting at 1 to 2 for all of our academy courses. We've already seen 7 students graduate this year and have many more almost meeting the goal. In addition, our GED program has seen 12 students meet GED requirements and move on to the next phase of their education. College Hill is proud of these students who have overcome so much and achieved great things. And we will be having a small outdoor graduation ceremony this year that we hope is a fitting tribute to these truly special class of students. And we look forward to having Urban Farm program reopening in the fall and serving students once again. And that concludes College Hill's student report.
That's with Jesse Martin. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you very much. Next up is Crescent Valley High School.
Hello. Okay, so Crescent Valley students are, of course, going to be transitioning back to in-person learning soon. Over the past few days, groups of Link Crew students and student government members have been putting together a series of welcome navigation videos, as well as leadership class, core council and other students planning some socially distanced welcomers with signs for freshmen and other newcomers come to CV for the very first time next week. Meanwhile, on the athletic side of things, we are beginning to see more of the traditional fall sports wrapping up, and we are beginning to see more of the traditional spring sports begin their practices and get off the ground. So that's exciting.
And we also have a statement from the Equity Committee last month. Simone came and she's a part of that. So we have a statement from them. The students involved in the equity hiring presentation are disappointed that they didn't get a slot this month as previously discussed. They will continue to collect testimonials from students of color across the district in the meantime and hope they'll be given the opportunity to talk directly to the intended audience, the board. So look forward to having some action on equity. And then I also wanted to update the board on some coalition work. So I know I bring that up sometimes. I've been in touch with a coalition, and so have, I believe, some of my other reps. I know Calvin has, and some other people as well. Student reps from around the state, and we've been meeting regularly. So we're pushing for action on mandating student representation on school boards statewide. So our district has that. Obviously, the districts who are represented in the coalition have that, but not every district does have that, as we were discovering while we were trying to do recruitment. So trying to make that happen, as well as legislation like SB 776, other issues students care about. And last thing, several members of the Corvallis speech and debate team will be competing at both state and nationals. So that's exciting.
Thank you, Kate. Next up is Corvallis High School.
Fall sports are finishing up this week. For many of the students, the return of sports was like extremely anticipated, and we're really excited to say that even in this weird year, the Spartans were able to play pretty well throughout. The excitement and opportunity brought by the sports has been really special and healing for many of the students. Spring sports are starting up this week, next week, and so we're hoping for another great season. Our freshman peer mentoring program, a few of those leaders gathered this last Wednesday and got to go into the CHS school building. For many of them, the last time they had entered the building was a little over a year ago, so that was a pretty wild feeling for a lot of them. The leaders were able to get acquainted with the new technology and protocols that have been established in the school to help prepare for the freshmen and new students' return, which is next week. The leaders on their assigned cohorts days will be going into the school to help them find the classes and teach them with the new protocols and just help ease some of the first day of school anxiety. And that's it for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. Ezra?
That was all of our report. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Any questions for our students' representatives or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you, our students' representatives. I want to remind you, Vince.
Actually, I do, and I was going to bring it up at the end of the meeting, but since you offered the opportunity, Kate, you talked about student representatives on the board. Interestingly, I just glanced at our district policies, and I didn't find a policy on student representation. So that while it has been a time-honored practice in our district, it's not a policy. So that may be an opportunity to work with the board in developing that.
Can I say something about that?
Sure.
It is interesting because I was contacted earlier this year by counsel for a school district who was talking about bringing on student representatives in one of our state's largest school districts that didn't have representation. And what I was able to share were the materials that we share with our student representatives when they get started, but I wasn't able to point back to policy. So I've seen that gap as well. And so I think it's something that we could talk about in the future related to policy and bring forward. So I'm glad you brought it up, Kate, because it reminded me of that conversation. And at that point, I thought we can incorporate this. So thanks for doing that, and Vince as well.
Thank you, Vince. I like that, and I am really encouraged by this idea. It could be also a model policy for other districts as well. Good. Any other questions or comments? Okay. All right. So I want to just note for our students representatives, you are part of this meeting, so feel free to raise your virtual hand just like any of us if you want to deliberate or discuss anything during the meeting. And also part of informal agreement, we excuse you anytime after 8 if you want to. Feel free to stick around as much as you need, but if you have homework or anything, feel free to leave at 8 or afterwards. With that, next item on the agenda is public comments, and we do have one public commenter. So the public comment period is open, and we have J. Alexander Welch. J. Alexander Welch, are you available, and can you hear me? All right, unfortunately, the person is not available. As I want to note, so the public comment period is now closed. And I want to note that the public comment period during our business meetings is open through registration, and we invite the community to participate. Also, you can connect with the school board over email at any time between meetings as well. So feel free to email the board at any point of time. Next item on the agenda is the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation work session. And that's an exciting part of our meeting. Just as a background for our community members, we have been working for several years right now to work with collaboratively with the Board of Trustees of the Public Schools Foundation on important work. How can we collaborate strategically and make sure that we serve our community and our students best? And this year we have collaborated on having 2 meetings per year, and this is our second meeting in the year. So I want to welcome everybody, and I believe Mike and Leif, we have slides to start. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do. And I preceding those slides, I want to follow up, Sammy, on what you just said and thank the board and administration for their cooperation and welcoming us to participate and learn how we can better help our families and students while they're going through normal and abnormal times, and how we can help you do that and fulfill your mission. So thank you.
And with that,
and I guess
I'll hand it over to you, Mike, to review the last meeting and the topics for tonight.
Be able to show those slides at this point, or?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So as Sammy alluded to, we want to, I've lost those, but if Mary. Great, thank you. And I want everyone to know I had nothing to do with this being able to come up like this. So thank you, whoever did. So the as Sammy alluded to, there are a lot of things been going on and through our meetings together, as well as our trying to help out and behind the scenes a little bit. And so we'll kind of talk to you about the things that happened in the spring, of course, were the tumultuous times. And as you all remember, a year ago, we were all jumping around and trying to do what we could do in our new world to support our students. And so the springtime piece was really trying to, programs like Care and Connect, and trying to stay connected with students and families and find out what the needs were. This was unprecedented. We didn't know what all those needs were going to be until they kind of hit us in the face. And so we were able to reach out to our donors and got a tremendous response, and which enabled us to pump $100,000 toward basic needs, such as food, some transportation, and a lot of other help to get students on board for online learning. So we were able to do that, but it was certainly a community effort, and that was the first thing that we stepped up for. We were able to do. And then, of course, summer was another unusual time, and you've got to realize that we had people who were our students that were planning to progress toward graduation or enter school the next year in an unusual circumstance, and a myriad of things. And so this summer support again, was very important, we felt, to be able to step in and help where we could. And so $71,000 went toward those programs. And they were both continuation of programs we'd done before, but a lot of new and innovative things. And in now we moved into the fall, and we had a lot of large needs again, and those were just carrying on and increasing because, as you all know, not only the families and students who had needed help previously were in need of that help, but many more families were falling through those holes and needed support. And so another $150,000 was put toward those programs. And so those are things that we discussed at our last meeting in much more depth. And many of those things, as you know, were related to the pandemic. So today, what we plan to do is talk in a little bit more depth, and we're going to have some of our board members step up and say a few words about these various issues, but such as Hands Across Corvallis, a strategic planning retreat that we prepared for and recently completed that we all felt was really beneficial. The upcoming summer programs investment to, again, try to recover some of those things that have been lost over a difficult school year. And then we will move into a couple of discussion questions, which we will open up for everyone, and those will be introduced later, and close with our Executive Director, Leif Gifford, talking about what some of our next steps may be. And so following that, I would like to move on to the next slide and introduce Rick Wallace, who will give you a few words. Rick?
Sorry, had to unmute myself there. Thank you, Mike, and thanks to the board for taking time for us tonight. As most of you may recall, resilience, care, and connection was the theme of the Foundation's annual Hands Across Corvallis fundraiser, which was held on February 4th. We chose the theme to reflect this year's experiences of students, families, and staff, and also the Foundation's commitment to the district. We had 357 registered guests compared to about 300 attendees when the event was last held in 2020. Though we're not able to tell how many people actually attended the live event or watched the video later. We'd like to thank the members of the board who were able to join us that morning or who did watch the video afterwards. The highlight, I think, for most people was a series of moving and really rather heartfelt video clips of students and staff who shared their personal experiences during this uniquely challenging year. Some of the student representatives of the board were among those who spoke. Many viewers, including some of our own trustees and staff, were moved to tears by these stories that really rather eloquently represented our theme. We consider the event a great success. We not only surpassed our $100,000 goal, but helped to tell the story of the district's work for our kids and families. At latest count, by the way, the fundraisers brought in about $119,000 compared to $75,000 last year. We're deeply grateful to the donors and sponsors for making it possible not only to continue our work, but to expand our support to the Corvallis School District on behalf of the young people we serve. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague on the Foundation board. With the next slide, here's Emily Barton.
Thank you, Rick. So I'll just go over a little bit of what we experienced in our strategic planning retreat on March 17. We held a 3-hour strategic planning retreat, and it was facilitated by Dr. Wayne Padover, who's an educator, a former superintendent, and a board member of the National School Foundation Association. So this retreat obviously took place during the pandemic, and I just want to shout out how nimble and adaptable we've all been this year, and that we were able to not only engage in the process, but also really broaden our conversations and make them very aspirational. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, exciting work. One of the key things that I wanted to highlight through that strategic planning was that our relationship with the school board surfaced as a really key strength in our foundation, and that's something we want to continue to cultivate. There were lots of things actually that came up, but that was one of them that we wanted to highlight tonight. And if you could move to the next slide, I will just go through our mission and vision, because that's the center of our work. And I'll read it for you. Our mission is to support local schools and inspire learning for a lifetime. And our vision is all students, regardless of race, culture, socioeconomic status, language, ability, gender, sexual orientation, or other identifiers, graduate from Corvallis Public Schools as engaged community members, ready to contribute to their fullest potential and navigate the world's complexities. Is Ashley on the call?
Actually, I get to do this part, Emily. Thank you so much. This is Leif Gifford, the director of the foundation. And I'm going to continue with the strategic planning retreat piece. We acknowledged up front that planning has been incredibly difficult under COVID, to say the least. And because of that fact, we decided to take a different approach this year to strategic planning and veer off our normal course of focusing on measurable goals and timelines. So we instead brainstormed a someday maybe list. Someday maybe is a term coined by David Allen in his book, Getting Things Done. And we chose this approach to give participants a sense of psychological freedom and to encourage creative thinking and allow people to imagine possibilities without having to commit to immediate action. And what emerged for us was a commitment to supporting the continued growth and capacity building of the foundation so that we can increase our impact on students, building the visibility of our work and finding ways, big and small, immediate and long-term, to help individuals connect to our mission. Expanding relationships with key stakeholders by continuing to build alignment with the district, focusing on student voice, and strengthening our connections with parents, teachers, alumni, and community partners. Prioritizing equity, diversity, and inclusion in everything we do, including supporting strategies to help marginalized students succeed. And finally, focusing on mental health by supporting wellness initiatives and ensuring that we are at the table with other groups tackling mental health. So that's in a nutshell. Again, no commitments in terms of action items yet to any of these things, but we'll be looking at these themes in the coming weeks and figuring out what's next for us. And now I'd like to invite our trustee, Angela Hibbard, to talk about summer programs investment.
Thanks, Leif. So as we started to think about funding for summer programs, I think it was immediately clear to all of us on the board that, after an unprecedented year, there's anticipated to be unprecedented needs this summer. And so the board quickly agreed to increase our funding for summer programs by over $100,000 versus the support that we've been able to provide in previous years. So we were thrilled to be able to do that. We received really a robust round of grant applications. And I think one thing that we've seen in terms of the relationship between the Schools Foundation Board and the school board and district leadership over the years, I think is just an increased partnership. And as a result of that, every year, I think we see just an increased quality in the types of programs that are coming forward and what we're able to support, because that communication And that partnership has been getting stronger. And I think that was definitely true this year regarding summer programs. So the goals of the request for grant applications was for programs that will help students, re-engage both academically and emotionally this summer, helping to make up for lost ground, and the priorities given to care and connection especially for students who experienced increased hardship during the pandemic, academic and credit recovery, which has always really been a cornerstone of summer programs that the foundation supports, and project-based learning that is focused on career and college readiness. So that was the focus of the grants, and we can skip to the next slide maybe, but we were able to agree to $190,000 in summer programs, which, if you recall, Mike summarized earlier. Last summer, our spending was $71,000 on summer programs. So it's quite a significant increase. And it's really just thanks to the generosity of our community and the partnership that we're able to do that. So I think if you can click to the next slide. If you're interested in seeing a full list of the programs that are being supported this summer, they're on the foundation website. And Ryan, I believe, is up next and is going to talk us through some of those in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, thank you, Angela. Parker, if you want to go to the next one. So there's just a number of really great things happening this summer. And again, thank you to the foundation for making it possible for our kids in our community. Again, as Angela said, we've focused on care and connection. We're focusing on engaging our students and also helping to support their academics. And so in some ways, the foundation allows us to do things that school districts typically aren't able to do. One of the things we're fortunate about this year is that we'll be able to enhance based on some additional support coming from the state of Oregon. But what an important summer this is for us, and an important summer it is for our students as we continue to work towards resumption. And so I just wanted to highlight sort of by category some of the programs that are happening over the summer. So that student and family connection, that care and connection piece, produce boxes will be provided over a 20-week period of time, 50 of those, which will also include some learning and some recipes for families. So that's a really important relationship builder and support we can continue to provide to the community. At CHS, one of the teachers there is doing a literature group, and it's focused on a trauma-informed approach. And so looking at that care and connection piece along with literature, and a book club at College Hill, which again, as you all know, and Jesse knows, College Hill is a really special place. And to be able to have engagement over the summer there is going to be super important. And a teacher that I would enjoy being in a book club with myself. So just a really good opportunity. Under student engagement, there is a scholarship for camps and transportation for kids to get to those camps outside of the offerings from the school district. Again, something that wouldn't be able to do without the support of the foundation. Our elementary principals all work together across the board to identify summer programs. Camp Ubuntu and Griffin are both camps that they designed. One will be through this format, and one will be in person with a lot of tangible hands-on, again, focusing on academics as well as relationships. So that is a really exciting thing for us to be able to include. Ubuntu means I am because we are. So again, it's really highlighting and recognizing that relational aspect. Parker, do you want to go to the next one? And then in terms of academic support, everything from elementary summer boost program to some programs, classes across the board at middle school, including preparation for Algebra 1, which is one of those board goals that we have. An ecology field camp, so getting kids out to experience ecology, and then those credit recovery programs that we've really relied on over the years to help to support our students to earn that diploma. Oftentimes that's for kids who earn that diploma over the summer at the end of their senior year, and then also some other credit recovery options that are available. So when you think about the relationship of the school district and the foundation, one of the things that really stands out to me is in that retreat, that was something that our facilitator had noticed based on those one-on-one conversations with Sammy and I, as well as the foundation board members and Leaf. And I think this is one of those examples of that connection and putting together programming that makes a lot of sense for kids, that was designed by staff with kids in mind. So again, you really can see that linkage. Go ahead and go to the next one, please. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Sammy and Mike.
All right, Mike, you want to take the first one?
I certainly will, Sammy. Thank you. And thank you, Ryan. So as I alluded to earlier, we were going to have a couple of more open-ended types of opportunities to share and ask and answer questions. And so I'm going to start, we have a couple of those, and I'm introducing the first discussion question, which is on your screen. So as you reflect on the past year, what are you especially proud of in terms of how we have delivered education and served kids in Corvallis? And that can be, you know, anything from a continuation of programs to new and innovative programs that have been developed in light of new obstacles. So I just will open that up, and we will do our best to allow everyone who wants the opportunity to chime in, but hopefully won't be stepping on each other in this video opportunity. So it's open.
I mean, the first thing that, hi, this is Vince Adams and Corval School Board. The first thing that pops to mind is just the really swift response as we went into the pandemic, how quickly the district, the community, and the foundation came together to just meet basic needs for our kids and families. It was on the order of hours that we were getting resources into the community to support kids as they weren't able to come to our buildings anymore. So I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind, and that work has continued and has grown. There's been synergies that have been discovered, and we're continuing that work. So I mean, if a kid is hungry, if a kid is traumatized, if they don't have their basic needs met, they can't learn. And that our district and our community and the foundation worked with us to make that happen and support our kids was just really, it was miraculous, truly miraculous there at the beginning of the pandemic.
Thanks, Vince. And I agree. And you mentioned hours, and it certainly makes me think of staff who were already had full-time jobs, and they had their own families going through crisis and dealing with their own students living in their homes, yet they were putting in that extra effort tirelessly. It was amazing to me how they were able to keep going and do it with a smile on their face, and the energy that they brought to it to continue to reach out to others who were in need while they themselves were. So I certainly appreciate that. Anyone else?
I'll talk since nobody's jumping in. This is Sarah Finger McDonald. I mean, this sort of follows on what Vince said, but it's sort of how things continued through this school year. That as we've quoted Dr. Fauci over and over about how we weren't going to set the virus was sort of in charge of how things were going to go in this time. And as metrics changed and numbers changed and educational plans changed, I have continued to be just blown away by the dedication of the districts and the ability of everyone in our district to adjust plans and adapt to new conditions and continue to provide contact for our kids and outreach to families and resources to families, in a time when the holes in our society's social services programs and equity have just been laid bare. Our school district has filled in holes that were necessary to be filled for our kids to learn. And we have teachers who relearned how to teach, and are gonna, in some sense, relearn it again as they have kids back in their classrooms following protocols that were foreign to us a year ago. So the flexibility and the dedication of the work that has happened in the last year has been just sort of awe-inspiring. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I cried during several school board meetings, and I just had tears running down my face listening to the list of summer programs. And it was, for the first time, happy tears, because it was work that's being done to bring us back together and to try to bring us back together better. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Sarah. That's great input. Thank you. Anyone else who has something, just kind of speak up, because it's going to be hard to find you otherwise.
Hi, this is Lou. I was just going to add in, or just underscore everything that's been said, and add in the way that the teaching feels a little bit different to this year, and very supportive of students and finding out what works for students, instead of thinking, or not thinking, but using a framework of like, this should be working for all students when it may not, and finding ways to connect with students in new ways. So I'm thinking about some of the technology that's used for reading, and then helping supply those resources for students that don't have access to Wi-Fi as much as other students. And so I think about all the resources that were said, but I didn't hear one about that part too. I think that was a huge piece of it. The number of hotspots that went out, and the fact that families and students of all ages are being trusted with an enormous amount of iPads and Chromebooks right now, all of those things that help them learn, and really making it as accessible as possible. I know that it's not 100% accessible, I'm sure, for a lot of folk, but doing what can be done to get that access for people, or for students. In the amount of meals that's being served, I know that whenever I would pick up lunches, I'm just like, wow, because it's a full like breakfast, well, not full, but it's a breakfast and a lunch together. And for some students, that's their only meal. And we recognize that as a community. And I think that just little things like that show that that families and students are cared about and are supported in ways that will help them be able to attention. Because like Vince said, if you're hungry, it's hard to concentrate. And so I think that those are some of the things I'm really proud of, and just the continued flexibility of staff and administration. I don't know how many times they had to redo the plans to go back to school and everything. And it's just all the care that went into it, and making sure everything was ready for whenever that time came. So working on things in advance of when we were going to open, like making sure the ventilation was up to date, having all the safety protocols in place with masks and hand sanitizers, all that kind of stuff. Just having it all ready and collected, I was really proud of that too, because it's showing that there's that level of care, not knowing even if we're going to use it like tomorrow or in a few months. And so I've appreciated that too.
Thank you, Lou. And I think that brings to light the fact that I think that the pandemic and the struggles and the special situations that we went through, some of them weren't as new as they might have appeared. I think that we've had a lot of people struggling with things, but it just hadn't really been bared and shown through the surface. And so I think that some of the things that we've done in crisis are going to carry on and allow us to do a lot of other things better, and recognize that there are people in need that it wasn't that clear to us before.
Therese, go ahead.
Jay. Well, I wanted to comment on the feeling of genuine concern for how our kids were doing that I would hear coming through in the communication from the teachers to, you know, my child, to the kids in his class. I know that they cared about teaching the content. I also know that they cared more about making sure that they could reach out to a child that wasn't appearing on camera, wasn't appearing at all, was leaving early, things like that. And I heard many times in the process of the, you know, these months now, moments when I saw the choice being made to reach out to this child and support them emotionally or talk about math, and how often it was to reach out and support them emotionally that I heard them choosing was really very powerful to observe. And then the other thing is that I want to acknowledge what we were doing before this ever happened, before we ever had this pandemic. I think there were many things that were going very well. And our children, when they went back to that building last week, when I dropped my son off, in spite of everything, and the Garfield literally doesn't even look the same right now. It was a feeling of coming back to some place that he knew to be safe, and he knew a place he would be cared for. It was a place where he knew that he had trusted relationships and trusted adults. He was literally walking into a room with adults he had never met in person, but he did not have any hesitation. And I think that was partly the bridge that was made in the reaching out and offering emotional support, but it was also in what the school was able to represent for him. I think that maybe our schools don't feel that way for every child or for every family. And watching kids who do feel that way about their school motivates me to find out what would be the reasons why kids do not feel that way when they're getting off the bus and walking through the playground to their new classroom. That's important data for us to pursue as well, because so many of the kids, it wasn't just joy that they got to do something different from the pandemic. It was familiarity and safety that they were walking into. And so that is just a shout out to what we were doing well before we ever got to this point. I don't think we would be where we are in supporting our children if we didn't have that foundation when we went into this situation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mike, for me, yeah, what I wanted to, this is Jay, and what I wanted to offer was I am very proud of the way the foundation sits, both from the grassroots, being able to listen to people and say, we have these needs, and not have to wait for something from afar, whether it's the state or federal, but can respond to needs that are right there. And it is about being able to listen. And it is also about being able to have money and resources to then respond. And aren't we lucky? And I'm so proud that we have that. And I guess the third thing is I know that behind that kind of a grassroots and quick response involves really good people working, Leave and her group, the foundation group itself. That means people are really keeping their ear open to needs, and then also managing a lot of resources and being able to respond. So that makes me really proud of us in Corvallis having that set of abilities. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. It speaks to the relationship too between the groups and all the people involved. So thanks.
Like we've got Jesse and Tina raising their hand.
I guess I'll go. I'm Jesse from College Hill, and I didn't want to repeat too much, but I just wanted to say, from my perspective, the thing I'm especially proud of is the teachers. Again, I know it's been said, but it's really hard to teach kids who are going through like this really weird time, and sometimes they can be unmotivated, they can be depressed, they can have things going on at home. And I just saw the teachers were able to adapt and help kids with that, while also literally creating content on the spot for kids to be doing in school as well. And I'm really appreciative of the teachers who are still here and helping us through it. I just wanted to say that.
That's great. And they need to hear that message, Jesse.
Hi, this is Tina, board member. I won't say much because much has already been said, and it's the same. I have the same sentiments of a lot. I do want to say that I'm just so overwhelmed with gratitude for the foundation and the district and staff and administration and teachers for the constant pivoting that we've been through this whole entire year, and the pivoting to meet our families' needs, the district needs, the students who would otherwise not have food or clean laundry or a place to live without the foundation. I just want to bring attention to how every pivot brought reimagining what it would look like for community members to step up and say, we're here, we're going to support. This is important. Education is important. So is the whole child. So is the family. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks, Tina.
I can go. I just am thinking about, how a lot of times in the past year, students have been told to make a choice and then been told, well, everything is subject to change right now. I'm thinking about mainly AP tests, which have been, coming up a lot for us these days. But I think something that has made it so much easier to be flexible with AP tests is that they were paid for this year by our schools. And, while no matter how worried a kid may be about, what learning they lost, or if they're going to take it in person or online or whatever, not having to worry about paying for it is a huge part of that. And that's just like one example personally, but I also think that leeway applies in other areas. And I echo what Jesse said about teachers. I mean, we students see them every day, and they honestly, in a world where a lot of us don't see very many people much, they are a person who you see pretty much every day, and they've just been amazing this year and so flexible. So echoing that, because I don't think it can be said enough to thank you to teachers.
Thanks, Kate. I know there may be other comments. I can see and hear the passion from everybody, and thank you for your input in the interest of time, so we can move on with the meeting and keep things going. I think that we'll close that off now, but it doesn't mean this discussion can't continue over coffee or any place else in the future as needed. So thank you for all that input, and I'll pass it back to Sammy.
Thank you, Mike. Actually, before I segue to the second question, I want to say I'm grateful for everything that has been said, or because of everything that has been said. And the work and the flexibility and the responsiveness of the foundation has been phenomenal. This couldn't happen without the generosity of the community, knowing that our community is there and available and supporting the foundation when we ask for the help. And it could have been possible without Leaf and Hannah and the partnership with our district staff and you, the trustees, you being there at the leadership and stewardship and having that collaboration and partnership on equity and on the school board goals has been phenomenal and very important for that alignment. I'm very proud of that. So really, thank you for that. And well, let's go for the next slide for discussion question number 2. And we'll have the same amount of time for this. As students return to school buildings, what issues are front and center? And how can the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation be a strategic partner in addressing these issues?
As a member of the foundation board, kind of building on that question is, we feel that we are in a position where we want to help fill the gaps. And, there are a lot of new things going on, and we don't know what can be covered in the standard school district budget or with new programming or supporting those programs. And so that's kind of what this question leads from my standpoint anyway, and I think from the standpoint of, I'm speaking for some of our other board members as well, is, it's kind of how can we continue to help best?
Thank you. Calvin and then Vince.
So for me and for some other students I've been in contact with, I think a lot of our concerns and I think issues are front and center are being solved by going to school, by going back in person, but also then those brings up the issues of the safety of the students who may not be able to receive the vaccine before they are in the building with other people. And so I think from the student's point of view, maybe perhaps a tiny bit more clarity on the precautions that are going to be taken before they're expected to go back into the building, especially for the students who are going into these buildings for the first time and who don't know their way around or who don't know which adults they can go to freely. So
thanks. Vince and then Jay.
So 2 points. I mean, right now there's this feeling of celebration in the air as vaccines roll out, case rates decline, but we're not out of the woods yet. There are a lot of people who are still struggling. And so I don't think we can take our eyes off of just ensuring that basic needs are supported so kids can be the most engaged they possibly can be in their education, because we know that that's going to be really important over the next, 3 to 5 years. The other thing, and this is something I brought up a few times before, is, learning happened over this pandemic. It's not learning that is easily encapsulated in standardized tests. Our kids are much more creative. They have had to be resilient. They've had to learn compassion. They have learned a lot of skills around the use of technology. So I think it's really important as an organization and as a community, as a learning community, that we take an opportunity or take this opportunity to ensure that we capture those best practices that have emerged during the pandemic and preserve those and take them forward. I don't know exactly what that looks like in partnership with the foundation. Innovation grants might be one vehicle, but I'm not sure how to do that. But I think it's really important that we don't try to go back to what was before, because what was before, we're not going to get there. And we've grown past that.
Thank you. Jay and then Sarah.
2 thoughts. One, I think you have to keep listening to the grassroots there, and if they know that you're a source of support, they will go to you with ideas. The second one, I'll sneak in because I think we might get some help on COVID-related costs from other sources. But if you stay and watch our bond report, it hit me that the trustees may need to be thinking about how to help programs who are now not going to have spaces for everything from auto shop and welding to, I don't know, you name other things that are going to be disrupted by good effort, work. And I just know that sometimes those teachers might, and programs might need some optional delivery systems or something. So heads up, it won't be COVID related. It'll be something that we all knew was coming, construction, but you look at a bare auto shop or a bare wood shop and you go, wonder how that class is going to go. That may be opportunities for people to be supported.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sort of follows with what several other people have said, is that, I think as kids walk in the doors to classrooms, we're going to really need to be focused on what do these kids need to continue learning, because if some of these kids, we may not have had as much contact as we would like to over the past year. Some of these kids may have things that have happened in their lives that we don't know about or anticipate. So I really liked what Tina said about, looking at the children and the families and taking care of the whole child and the whole family. Because we have work to do to catch up with any academic losses that have happened. Learning has happened. Figuring out where we are with that is going to be a job for the next, several years probably. But none of that making up of anything can happen unless we have kids who are in classrooms ready to learn.
Thank you. Therese and then Luke.
Thanks, Sammy. Gosh, I think probably all of my really novel ideas were not that novel and other people already said them. So the foundation has proved itself in our community to be something that can pivot much faster than many other entities or institutions can. So I would say how we best can be looking to you is to be able and willing to step in on a dime. And you've already been that. But that opportunity will come again. I don't think I can tell you exactly what unmet need is sitting out there waiting for us, but I know that it is going to show up. And when it does, our best response is going to be a well-organized foundation that's prepared to step in and bring swift leadership to the situation, while a slower moving institution like an entity of the government figures out how it can manifest a response. So thank you for your historical proof that you're able to do that. And in whatever thing it is, we know it's coming. So I feel like we're in pretty good hands, though, having a great foundation behind us to help us navigate it.
Thank you. Lou and then Kate.
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff has already been said, and there's also this big question mark of like what the future looks like with the pandemic, because as it was already mentioned, it's not gone. We're finding ways to navigate it and also ways to protect ourselves from it. And we still got a little ways to go before we're completely in the clear. So keeping all that in mind and thinking about like some of the question marks around like where students are, and thinking a little bit more strategically of what we're measuring them against. Are we measuring them against some pre-COVID kind of ideals of what the year should have looked like, instead of assessing what they have learned this year in new ways? And so I don't know, I don't think there's no instrument out there that has the ability to measure pandemic learning, because we have never been through this. And so I think we need to be really creative in how we think about that next year and see what's working in other areas. So some research on that would be great. And also I'm thinking about some of the things that have really helped students either thrive or maybe advance a little bit farther than they would have without some things. So I mentioned earlier, technology stuff. So what are some of the learning tools? Like I know my youngest child goes to Lincoln and they're using iStation and Dreambox, and I'm losing the other one right now, LexiaCore, but I don't think all the schools have that. And so what is it about those programs that's helping second graders learn how to read, and is that replicated across other grades as well? And how can that be more accessible to other schools in the district as well? And so stuff like that, I think that would be a great partner with the foundation if that's an investment that other schools need, but we don't necessarily have the funds quite yet. In looking at those models within our district that are working before we look outside, because I think that there's been plenty of teachers that have tried really innovative ways to help students thrive through the pandemic, and see if it will work in other areas as well. So that's more of a, I feel more tangible example than I could give about we need to figure out how to assess students differently, because I do think we need to do that too in the future. But yeah. Oh, one more thing, sorry. We also have to still recognize and work through some of the experiences that students we're having to face in school that have to do with bias And so whether that's based on race or gender, sexuality, body size, all the isms that show up, there's still a lot of work to do probably in that area as well. And seeing how a lot of students have thrived from not having to experience some of those things in the schools, I think shows that that is an area that we can continue to grow in as a district. And I don't know what that looks like for a partnership too, but I think that's actually one of the front and center ones because it'll help determine the experiences as we move into a new future.
Thank you. Kate and then Ezra.
Yeah, so I echo what Calvin was saying about how do we make students feel safe. Like maybe there needs to be a little bit more communication on that. But I was also thinking every time I hear like students are going back to school, I think, well, some of them aren't. A good percentage of them aren't. Cohort C, I know there's like 100 or so people at CV who aren't going back, and multiply that by every school in the district, and that's a lot of people who are in the status quo, and that's not changing, and they still need the resources that have been going towards people in distance learning all year, and they need continued support. So that's one of the things that I would suggest for issues being front and center. And then the other thing, which I believe somebody mentioned in public comment at a past board meeting, was about time. At least for high schoolers, our classes are cut slightly weird for the half days, and for these 2 weeks we have like half classes and no afternoon classes. And so like in addition to the loss that's already happened of learning during COVID, we are also doing less class time than usual. Like we already had less classes, and now we're doing less than we already did less. So I think we need to address that as we're moving back in person. And I don't want to dismiss the like very real social learning that we're going to be doing when we're in person, because that's totally valid and that's totally important. But, you know, in terms of like, are we going to be qualified to take AP Calc next year? Or like, are we going to be ready for those things? I think that's something to also keep thinking about just from the student perspective. And I will turn it over to Ezra because I'm sure he's got something awesome to say too.
Yeah, I was thinking pretty similar to Kate on that. The cohort C and the Corvallis online students have been some of the students that I worry most about. And so I was actually extremely grateful and happy to hear that we're planning to continue that distance learning option. But what I feel is that we've been lacking a kind of a clear intent of ensuring that the programs for Corvallis Online and Cohort C, that they're going to be in a program that is going to constantly be growing and improving. And so I think we need to be finding avenues to support these students directly and specifically, and just so as not to allow them to fall behind the students that are receiving that in-person teacher to student care. And so when I was looking at the different programs we have planned for the summer, I think it'd be amazing if we could find a way to have programs during the school year for these students that are going to be taking these hard classes like AP Calc, but they're not having that teacher to go to on hand to get help.
Thank you, Ezra. Tina?
So everybody has touched on quite a bit on how to support our students as they return and into the next year. I just wanted to throw it out to the foundation to plant a seed about some programs or development classes, some connections between that you could collaborate with the district about to support our life skills kiddos and to give them support that, you know, they otherwise have not have had over the pandemic, and there just hasn't been the avenue to support. So, you know, to plant that seed that this is a very a community that are going to have needs, and they're going to keep arising, and then we're going to have to try to meet. And I think the foundation's a great place to start on thinking about how we can collaborate and support these families and our life skills kiddos.
Thank you, Tina. Calvin?
So I want to thank Tina again, because what she was saying actually reminded me of what I'm now going to say. I think another important thing is also the teachers. Like, we can't expect the teachers to be fully supporting the students if they're not able to have what they need to be successful. So I think also just making sure that we're providing that platform for the teachers to be successful in what they're trying to do is also something that needs to be out there, or at least have awareness towards.
Thank you, Calvin. Any further comments or thoughts? Luke?
Just one more thing, is just the impact of having mental health support in the district, I think, is really powerful. And that's something also that I'm sure we don't have enough of in the district. And so I think that's also a need, because of the transition back to in-person is both exciting and scary for a lot of people. And so I think that that's something that's also like an immediate front and center. I think when I answered it before, I was thinking like next year mostly, but we're also like phasing back right now. And so thinking about those immediate needs of that transition support and what that looks like for both the students, but I don't know if we ever really talk. And so I appreciate Calvin bringing that up about like, what about the teachers too, like the support for that. It's different when you're used to seeing people on the screen all day. And I don't know what the strategic partnership can look like, but yeah.
Thank you. And I want to provide the opportunity for our trustees as well, if there's any thoughts or anything you want to add. I would say it's really hard to summarize everything there. It's really good content, but what I would say, we're talking about equity, making sure that we're helping students and investing in structural changes that will transform our education, addressing the needs for our students immediately, and also looking far away and looking for the summer, for the next year, and how can we provide our students opportunities so they can succeed and thrive. One thing I believe, and I want to add, not to really substitute from anything that was mentioned, is education will look completely different. And some of our students, especially in high school, they might be now looking for jobs or doing jobs. And I heard from other districts, they're learning and at night. And I don't know if that's going to be the norm. I don't know if we can contribute to their learning in a way that helps them and support them. But we need to meet every student where they are and help them grow and provide them with the opportunities that they need. And that will be more customized, more individualized than ever. And understanding how phenomenal that idea is and how much investments that deserve is really important. And I believe that should be front and center in our investments and our strategic thinking. So truly, we believe in every student and we give them the support they need. Really, thank you everybody for all of these thoughts. They've been captured, and I want to add, Kate, if you want to add one more thing before we transition.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, because we're about to transition, that it's 8, so I'm gonna head out. But it's also my penultimate meeting as an official CV school board rep, so I just wanted to say it's a great penultimate meeting, and I will see you all in May.
See you in May. Thank you, Kate. So I want to hand it to Leif to talk about next steps for our two groups.
Awesome. Thank you, Sammy. What a great discussion and so many wonderful points that everyone raised. So thank you so much for that. And it always is apparent to me in these meetings with the school board what an incredible set of good listeners our CPSF trustees are, because they are just soaking up everything that that the school board and district staff and student reps are saying. So I'm really looking forward to, appreciate your summary there, Sammy, because we only have half our board present here tonight. And I'm looking forward to summarizing for them what some of the highlights of this discussion were, because there's a lot of great information in it and good reminders. So as we wrap up, I want to thank you for, again, creating the opportunity for us to talk and collaborate as two boards, two organizations. And that just to say that we regard our increased alignment and communication with the school board as one of our great successes in the past few years. And research on school foundations really does point to the fact that kids do better when foundations align with school districts and work together. And so we deeply appreciate this chance for strategic discussion and look forward to more such opportunities next school year. So as we wrap up our portion of tonight's meeting, we want to ask the whole group what topics we need to consider for future meetings.
So this is an observation, and it's an observation I've made before about when the foundation meets with the school board, is that often the information only flows in one direction. You know, it's clear that you know, the foundation board and the foundation staff are very nimble and responsive to needs. You're very close to the action, and you're very well engaged with the community. So I would very much welcome some, you know, information flowing the other direction. What are you hearing? What are your priorities? How can the school board align with needs? What intelligence can you provide us? So that would be my suggestion for upcoming meetings, is having a more of a dialogue than checking in with the school board and letting us pontificate on what we see are the needs.
Thank you, Vince. And it's really interesting that you point that out, because the facilitator of our recent strategic planning retreat also urged us to consider, you know, a more active role in suggesting future directions. And we really, I think, have been in the mindset of looking at the district and the school board as the experts and attempting to learn what we can to be responsive. And so I hear what you're saying, and I hear what Dr. Padover was saying, and we'll take that into consideration.
That having been said, I you know, and Leaf understands my view a little bit, or where may not understand it, but he understands what it is. That I think that we are really seeking that expertise that Leaf referred to find out where those needs are. And then we take that, and then that next step is to take that to our supporters and find out what they are passionate about. Because what we can be most successful in earning money, raising money for, are those things that our supporters can become passionate about. And so we may hear a whole bunch of things from you, Vince, but we may only take and then we'll talk about them. We're excited about half of them, and when we take those to our supporters, and they're excited about half of those that we're excited about, and those are the ones we can really focus on and get somewhere with. So there's a practical side to all of this, and I certainly understand what you're saying, and very much appreciate that you do want input from us, which we will give, particularly I think when we are out there with with our supporters and finding out what their passions and concerns are. And I will try to be more cognizant, personally at least, of bringing those back to you.
That's wonderful, Mike. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Vince.
I was just saying thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to jump the line real quick here and say, Mike, I'm remembering an experience we had on the school board, I believe last year, parts of our professional development with OSBA and our staff who are leading the mental health and multi-tiered mental and social wellness intervention, and how can we talk about the programs and the investments the district made on these areas and being able to explain it. This just reminds me of how important to communicate those investments that we're having, and for us maybe to collaborate on how to explain those investments and share them with the community as well. So thank you, Mike. Really good points. Therese, and then Sarah, and then Emily.
I'm happy to go, but I'm pretty sure that Sarah's hand was up before me, so I want to give her the chance
Go
to
ahead, Therese.
say her good idea first.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, that's kind of you. So I have a couple things I jotted down that I don't know that they translate to specific, well, they're topics. I think they're topics we should explore in discussion with one another. I don't know the best way exactly to do it, but so one thing I've been thinking about, and I think the foundation, it would be great to have in dialogue with us about this, is finding, establishing a perspective within our community around the idea of, say, I don't know if you're probably, at least some of us are familiar with lifespan psychology, right? And the idea that there's, you know, from birth to death, there's stages of development, right? And we know that there are stages of development in terms of the lifespan of a child's school life, right? The K-12 years. I would really love to see our foundation and our school board work together to create some, I don't know how to say, continuity around what a healthy child lifespan of a school life looks like. And I feel like this is something that needs a lot of direction from the community, a lot of opportunity to hear from parents. I don't even know if this is a very coherent idea, but I'm putting it out there because I think there are a lot of smart people in the room, and so you can make some sense of what I'm trying to say. But this is like this is a community-wide effort. This is not something that's contained within the school district, and so I think I would like to have discussion around what that could look like, which kind of works in tandem with the idea of having some communication around establishing like a threshold of thriving development. We have our benchmarks of like what we want kids to learn, and we do a pretty good job of communicating what those are. But in terms of looking at whole child development, which I think our district is really committed to, and the foundation is as well, which has been demonstrated in our response to the pandemic, looking at children as more than just vessels that we dump information into, but context specific individuals who have these lived experiences that are all, you know, converging in their classroom or virtual room learning. And so working together to establish some benchmarks of not just meeting the minimum standard, but what does it look like for a child to thrive in their context is a conversation I'm just really eager to have. And I think that the foundation may be a place to help foster that conversation. Yeah. And then I suspect that what the person that you were talking to was saying is that one of the things that foundations can provide for school districts is you are a checks and balance for us. We have the community in general, but the community, we represent the community, but we don't work with the community the same way we work with the foundation. We need alignment with the foundation. I think that person was saying, don't be afraid to tell the district, the school board, if you think they're missing the mark on something. And so if you think we're missing the mark on something, we would want to hear that from you. And we have a lot of confidence in your ability and your wisdom. And so hearing something from your supporters and you're not hearing it from us, we need to know that, right? Because we don't hear from the supporters the same way that you do. Okay, I'm all done now.
Thank you.
Well,
Sarah,
Therese said some of what I was going to say, and that, you know, I think we do need you. I think the board has contact, or both boards have contact with the community in different ways. And especially as boards change and potentially directions of boards change, we need to be able to tell each other what you're focused on is not what I'm hearing from the community is what that's what they value. So I really do think the communication, I think right now our values are fairly in line. And so, maybe the communication is only going one way because we kind of are in agreement. But I think if we were ever not in agreement, that would need to be, we need to have a relationship between the two boards where if there was not an agreement, it would be something that could be brought forward and discussed in a comfortable way. So.
Yeah, Sarah, I think that's exactly the value of the increasingly close relationship that's been built over probably the last 3 to 4 years, is the ability and comfort. And I will tell you that the school board and district have certainly made me personally feel very comfortable to say anything and to bring those things up. But that's right. Thank you.
Emily, and then I think Angela, your hand was up. Emily?
I just have a quick comment in response to Vince and Sarah and Therese, that I'm really excited about the opportunity as a trustee to be a strategic partner to the school board. And I hear that in your comments, and I really appreciate it. I think there's a lot of opportunity for those strategic partnerships. Foundations, we have the opportunity to decide how we want to give funds. And some of those transformations are taking place on foundations across Oregon and across our region. And so it's really exciting to be part of the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation, because we're taking very innovative approaches to supporting our school district. And I hear you saying strategic partnership, and I love that, because one of the ways that foundations have transformed across our region is to move from responsive partnerships to strategic partnerships. And that's a really exciting change, because we can get on top and in front of problems instead of always being on the back end of problems. And I'm excited about that. And thank you so much for that invitation.
You said that so much better than I did, Emily.
Anyone else?
Angela.
Angela, I saw your hands up momentarily.
Just real quick, I had two things regarding future meetings, and kind of speaking to Vince's point, rather than what might feel like a report out, kind of more of a dialogue. I recall a meeting we had, a year or two ago together, where we were able to break up into groups. And I know this is difficult kind of on this kind of platform, but I can actually recall some specific ideas that came out of that group, because we were in the same group, that we have actually implemented that directly came out of that conversation that night. So I think maybe just something for us to bear in mind for future meetings is just how we structure the meeting that might facilitate a little bit more of that dialogue, because it was definitely fruitful. And then something that I'm mindful of is that we, on behalf of, community members, have historically supported programs that community members feel passionately about, that CPSF has either kickstarted or promoted, things like bike camp, outdoor school, kindergarten academy, those kinds of things, which have over the years become kind of marquee programs that I think lead to some of that student engagement that has kind of carried them through. And maybe they look different in the future. Maybe we won't return to those legacy programs, but I think that those kinds of programs, we shouldn't lose sight of them, because especially as kids start to go into new communities, those kids who left school one day back in March and are now going to be going back to a totally different building than they left if they were, now a 6th grader or a 9th grader or what have you. I think that a lot of those programs that CPSF has supported provide that kind of community that's outside of the traditional, classroom experience that kind of carries them through. And so I hope that, we're mindful of that when we continue to look for those opportunities. And if some of those programs do continue as they were before, we need to be aware that, rather than one cohort of kids that need bike safety camp, we now have 2 cohorts of kids that are running around Corvallis without bike safety camp, or kindergarten academy or whatever it happens to be. So I feel like, you know, that's an area that we need to keep an eye on and that we would be able to partner and support.
Wonderful, thank you. Teresa and Sarah, or is it from before? All right. Well, back to you, Leith. Do you want to add anything before we conclude?
I'm just busy scribbling notes, Sammy. This was great. Really appreciate everyone's input. Fantastic conversation. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks, trustees. We really appreciate your partnership, and I want to acknowledge that half of the board of trustees, the other half, we met with them earlier in the year. So much appreciation for all of you. And maybe Parker, if you want to take the slides down, so we can see everybody. And I want to say thank you. I am really one of the most exciting things that I have as part of my board assignments was is the being a liaison to the foundation and sharing the news from both sides. And I look forward to having more partnerships. And as Ellen mentioned, it's strategic partnership. So we can anticipate the problems and solve them as soon as they occur, if not before they occur. So thank you so much for your work, and really looking forward for more of this collaboration. With that, feel free to stick around if you want to tune in. And I am going to ask our board members and staff if you prefer we have a break for 5 minutes right now or after the bond. And I saw a thumbs up for having a break right now. So if there is no objection, thank you again for our trustees, and see you soon. And if there's no objection, we'll have a recess for about, let's say, 7 minutes. So we'll be back at 8:25.
Thank you all.
back from recess, or reconvening from recess. And welcome, everybody. And the next item on the agenda is the bond items for information and approval. So the board has been provided with the written reports and 3 requests for approval. So we'll start with the written reports. And I believe, first of all, welcome Kim and Dale. And I believe that there is only the reports, no presentation this time, correct? Perfect. So I want to say thank you for the reports, and I want to acknowledge this is an important work. We are on time, under budget in completion and completing the $200 million approved bond that was sold in 2018. And I want to acknowledge the important and critical work that the district is doing to make our schools safer and better. So thank you. And with that, I want to also invite the public to review the written reports in the meeting packets. Any questions from our board members? Vince and then Sarah.
So, I mean, the bond report is always a highlight because we get to see progress, especially because, you know, we're in a pandemic and we don't get to see the building. So it's always nice to have an insight. The question that came up for me was that I wasn't aware of all the schools that are getting the all user or inclusive bathroom upgrades. And I was just curious, do we have that list? Do you know that list off the top of your head? Maybe I don't. Have you already given that to me and I don't remember? It's just, where are we implementing those?
So Vince, every school is getting at least one set of all-inclusive user restrooms. It's our student restroom design. And we have that on the list of potential additional projects when we get done with all of our work to see if we can add more of those. But we can provide you a list of school by school, which set of bathrooms are being upgraded to that new format.
Yeah, when you get a chance, that would be amazing. Yeah. That's really exciting. And then the other comment that I have here is, wow, the Garfield office looks really, really good. I mean, considering what it was before, it's like, and the polished concrete shot was just, that was some great polished concrete in the hallway. As a guy who's done concrete in the past, that's really nice. Anyway, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah and then Lou and
Yeah, I have to admit mine's not really, it's actually not a question. But I just want to say, I mean, Vince said how great it is to get the report. And I want to say that when the pandemic hit, sort of after my panic about how are we going to feed kids, what about the kids who aren't safe at home, all those panics, I had this, how are we going to deal with our bond project in the middle of a pandemic? And it was just this, and this we have to deal with. And I just have to say that the bond has been a highlight every time we get a report. And just, it feels good to have something that we've consistently been moving forward, and that we're moving forward with making these amazing learning spaces for our kids. And that we've, the work, the adaptability and the work that's been done to keep it going has been amazing. And to, we're on time, we're in our budget, in the middle of a pandemic. And I just was when I was reading the report today and saw the Garfield office, which is, Garfield's a school that's close to my heart. I just thought, this has been one of those things that's kind of kept us all going, is getting these reports. So thank you.
Lou and then Jane.
Yeah, I was excited reading the report too, and get the live action all of the time of Lincoln. And it's just amazing to see how much progress has happened during everything. I have had a question about one, if we'll have an opportunity as board members to take a tour at some point as they get more complete. And especially because not all of us got to have a tour of in progress. That'd be amazing. So just throwing that out there. And then the other one is how the impact of students returning has been. if it's changed anything. It feels like you all are still on track and everything like that, but I was just a little curious about the impact of return to school.
Well, I won't lie, there's been a ton of work that's happened to make plans for how we will keep students safe, how we'll handle traffic, how we will mitigate noise for students who don't handle additional noise very well. And I won't say that we've done it perfectly. We have had a few little glitches here and there, not safety wise, but noise wise. And so we've been working hard and really close communication with our principals. But for the most part, and we've been able to work around it, our contractors are committed to staying on schedule. And so we're seeing them modify their work schedules in some cases, and a lot of support from our contractors and principals to collaborate and make sure that we're going to keep it going. Gail, do you want to add anything to that?
Just one little thing. With the pandemic, it's been the inverse of a normal construction remodel project, in that we would have been operating under student occupied school conditions. And it's really just a matter of when. So we're just turning that mindset back on now as kids come back.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, because I recognize it would have been different the whole time with students there, but now that they're back, it changes things a little bit. So yeah, I can only imagine too some of the jumps that might happen once in a while with not just the vibration too.
Correct.
Sure.
It's probably exciting for them because I was thinking about that too, how a lot of the students may have not been able to see that up close view of things happening, and now they can see it outside the window and outside and stuff like that, and at the schools where they're around. So that's exciting, I'm sure, for them too.
That's true.
I will say one of the bigger challenges right now is with the pandemic, we are recommending keeping windows open for additional fresh air. And some of our campuses just can't do that because of the different varying levels of noise. And so what we're doing is saying, open it when you can. And we've done all of our other mitigating factors to keep the ventilation going. But that is one thing that has really stood out with teachers is that, well, it's noisy. So.
Thanks, Jay, and then Therese, and then I'll recognize myself. Jay.
I just echo the pride and I guess amazement about how things are going well. Thank you, both Kim and Dale and your crews. And I guess I have two other quick thoughts. One, I was taken aback by, I mentioned it earlier in the meeting, the tech ed areas, and wondering what will those guys, students, teachers do for the next, whatever, 8-9 weeks. And so that it's a real challenge. I know you have thought about it, so I'm just curious as to where it's going. The last thing is that my experience at Corvallis High, when we tore down the old building and built the new one, there's two mixes of attitudes that kids get from new construction. One is absolute excitement and feeling of so much positiveness that they get a new renovated school, hooray. And then there is the group of students that say, and I'm not going to get to see the benefit of it. So I'm just saying heads up. I don't know where that might be. It doesn't feel like anybody's losing because their school is being, renovated and they won't get a chance to use it like it was. But that was a big sore point, especially for seniors, as they didn't get to have the benefit of a nice school. So just another thought.
So we've worked closely with the CTE programs, and we have, in some cases, found temporary housing for them at different parts of the campus. For example, both of the scene shops at their theaters have now become ceramics studios, temporary ceramic studios. And the Woods programs are working outside and undercover and doing build projects. The auto shop at CV is actually closed down for the rest of the year. They don't have autos program running. They're redirecting some of those classes to different functions. I think that they're doing a car maintenance. I know that Kevin Skillings is doing a car maintenance course, which is really popular. And so we've been really creative in finding different locations for everybody. And some courses were canceled for this semester. But that being said, it was done intentionally to say, It's going to be affected, and let's have it be now and come back full in the fall. So I think all the instructors are on board. They've been working really hard to keep student experiences rich and fruitful, and I really think they deserve a lot of kudos going through this, in addition to the pandemic.
Thank you, Kim. Sounds really great.
Lou, and then did you speak to Lou already? Then Therese, and then Sarah. Therese.
Oh, thanks, Sammy. I think Kim already addressed my question, which was related to ventilation. My other question is related to sound. So is there, I don't know, you can't really have an alternative working space for students that are sensitive to sound in a construction zone. Are there other things we can offer those students? I don't know, noise cancellation headphones or anything, or is this just we just have to get through it? Well, I don't want to say we just have to get through it. I think rather than offering students something to accommodate the sound, we're thinking about how to work swing shift or how to postpone the loudest types of activities. I can't say that there won't be any, a dropped board or something that makes a loud noise, but I will tell you that, we're doing construction at Jaguar where we house our life skills program, and we're learning, right? So as something is impeding a student's experience, we're quickly responding to the construction team and they stop work immediately. So we're trying really hard to not have it impact student experience, but we also have plans in place on how to address it if it does start to happen. And so we want to put students first and construction second, knowing that there may be some accommodations we have to make in order to keep going on schedule, but our goal first is to not impact students. That's great. I feel like the entire project has really had the students at the front and center, from the very beginning. And I'm not surprised that you are looking at how can you make adjustments on the construction end, and especially now as they are going through this transition of coming back into their spaces. I really appreciate that you are trying to minimize that. I also just want to thank you for not finishing Garfield before the kids got to come back, because my child was devastated that he was going to miss the experience of being in the modular. Now, I don't know what that's about or why that was such a high point, but when he found out, wait, when I come back in the 5th grade, the modulars are going to be gone. I said, well, I'll get to go back before this year. So thank you, school district, for figuring out how to make that possible, because we didn't have a place to store a modular so that he could have a shot at being in one. But now he's getting his chance. And the first day he came back, he did tell me it is everything he dreamed it would be. I don't know what that dream was, but I just want you to know, not every kid out there is excited to see them go. Some kids are grieving right now at their loss. So anyway, thank you for not finishing your field early. Thank you for that story, Therese, because we needed that when we're dealing with the turmoil of putting students in modulars when we're trying to get rid of modulars. So it's good to hear somebody's excited about it.
Sarah, you have another story?
Well, the modular thing, my kid is mad because she's in the wrong modular. If she is not going to be able to be there when the building is done, she should at least get to be in the new fancy modulars, not in the old modular. So the modulars at Garfield are causing all sorts of angst.
Sarah, tell her that the new fancy ones are smaller.
I'll tell her that.
Yeah, tell her that.
Okay.
All right. With the 30 seconds I have for this section, I want to ask you, could you talk a little bit about the 3D coordination and class detection of components that have been performed on Husky? What does that mean?
Oh, thanks for asking. That's a good one. It's called BIM, which stands for Building Information Modeling. So they start with the engineer and architect's drawings, electronic drawings, and then they use high-tech software to merge different subcontract trades together. And literally you'll see pipes crossing conduits and sprinklers and duct work, and they look for things that are going to bump into each other on the computer so that when they're in the field building, it won't happen. And usually when they start the process, they push the button and it'll spit out 1,000 conflicts. And by the time they're done with that process, they're down to 0 or very few that they have to resolve in the field. So it's a way to make building much more efficient. It's really exciting, actually. I'll try to get a picture of it. There's some really great 3D renderings that show all of that. I'll try to put a picture in my next report.
Please, that would be great. Thank you. All right, so next item on the agenda, thank you, team. Really appreciate the work. And the next 3 items on the agenda is the approval. So team, you have in front of you the CHS reserve allocation approval for your consideration and approval. So any questions before we go to a motion and discussion? Vince?
Yeah, I'm struggling to sort these numbers out. And so, I mean, I'm seeing an increase. Can you just go through the numbers so I can understand? Because I'm feeling dense.
Are you talking the CHS request for this?
Right.
Okay.
The reserve allocation approval. And
yeah,
then,
it's just been an incremental guaranteed maximum price.
Right.
We started with 1.2 million to get some early release mechanical contractor equipment ordered, that kind of thing. And then it wasn't very much longer. We asked for the full guaranteed maximum price that included that early release. And the total of those is 4.6, and the board approved that on February 18th, if I recall. But what we forgot to put in that request was simply the accounting shift of the bond reserves. You'll see it happen in the CVHS seismic request tonight. There's a statement in there about shifting bond, using a certain amount of bond reserves. And that's what this is. So we just neglected to make that accounting request in the previous approval.
So this is
not
just
an additional $2 million.
Got it. So this is just an accounting shift. It's just shifting money from in buckets.
It's money we had budgeted in the bond reserve accounts, but we just need to make the shift into the project accounts.
So Vince, our bond management plan requires board approval to allocate officially the bond reserves. And so we had been talking about it as needing to be an allocation that the leadership team had approved, but the board had not.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for indulging me. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So Sammy, I'm ready for a motion if you're ready.
Absolutely. What's your motion?
I move to authorize the allocation of bond reserves in the amount of $2,019,110 for Corvallis High School to fully fund the bond work promised for the school.
Adam seconds the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion of the motion? Seeing none, we'll enter into a vote. Say aye or nay accordingly. Director Conroy?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Adams?
Aye.
Director Baker?
Aye.
Director Whitebear?
Aye.
Vice Chair Finger McDonald?
Aye.
And Chair Doggo votes aye. The next item on the agenda is CVHS seismic GMP approval. Guaranteed GMP stands for guaranteed maximum price approval. So any questions before we move into a motion and discussion?
For whatever reason, this one made sense to me.
All right, so do we have a motion?
I'd be happy to move. I move to authorize staff to execute guaranteed maximum price amending with Girding Builders for the Crescent Valley High School Building A seismic upgrades project for $1,598,224.29, establishing a full guaranteed maximum price of $13,598,040.49, and approve the allocation of bond reserves in the amount of $4,336,801 for Crescent Valley High School to fully fund the projects.
Is there a second for the motion?
I second. This is Sarah.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? See none, we'll enter to vote. Director Whitebear,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Conroy.
Aye.
Director Baker,
Aye.
Director Adams,
Aye.
Vice Chair Finger McDonald,
Aye.
Chair Abdullah votes aye. Passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is CHS video surveillance contract approval. Is there any questions on the reports or the requests before we enter a motion? Jay, and then Vince, and then Luke.
So Kim, I have a question. I had forgotten that that was a part of the bond. And I remember back when that we had some sort of cameras that Mr. Strobridge would sit and watch once in a while. Can you describe maybe just a broad overview of what that technology looks like in the new build?
Sorry about that. We did put in video surveillance with the new building when it was built in 2005. And so what this is a replacement of the outdated cameras and an upgrade to a new, more unified platform for the video surveillance. Currently at CHS, we have, I think, 3 different platforms that we have to use to view the video footage, and it's really cumbersome. And so the new software package is Convergent, and we're purchasing from Convergent. I'm sorry, it's Genetech. It's the software, and it actually, the Genetech software handles our access controls, video surveillance, and intrusion. And so what that would look like is it'll be accessible from a secure login anywhere in the building district, or even I could do it with a secure login if I have rights for that from home, so that we can see what's going on in the building. It is a bond promise to upgrade that technology, and it really is for us to supervise our investment in these buildings. So we have video surveillance at all of our secondary schools except College Hill. And so minus Pauling, CHS, CV, and Sheldon all have video surveillance systems. And as part of the bond, both CV and CHS get upgraded video surveillance systems.
Thank you.
Awesome. I see Vince, your hand down, so Luke.
Thanks, Kim. You answered part of my questions about like which schools already had equipment, and the other one was if they were all getting upgraded, because that was something that was part of conversations my time on the board. My other question is the purpose for building security, or is it for safety? Like, what is the purpose of the surveillance equipment in general? And then the last question, with new technologies, with surveillance equipment in general, like where's the footage stored and who has access to it? I was more curious about the security on the access. And so those were just my main questions. I just thought I'd tell you all at the same.
Yeah. Parker forwarded me your questions, so I thank you for sending those ahead of time. That was helpful. So we are upgrading both the 2 high schools. We did not have an upgrade of the middle schools because we didn't have as extensive of work going on at the middle schools. And so middle school upgrades will likely happen with general fund dollars on a more as needed basis. Those systems are also newer. They were installed after the fact, after the high schools were installed. The video surveillance footage will be stored on district-owned servers. They will be able to be accessed over the network. And so currently we're planning for the servers to be housed at the schools so that we don't take up bandwidth sending the video surveillance back and forth to the district office. They will be in secured MDF and IDF rooms so that nobody would have physical access to those. As far as who gets access, it's currently set up that our campus security have access to it, our behavior support has access to it, and our principals. That's it. I have access, and technology, some staff in technology have access, but it's pretty restricted on who gets to take a look or to have access to copies of the footage. Even the police have to do written public records requests to get access. We work very close with legal counsel because there's a lot of
a lot of privacy issues associated with that. It is really meant for supervising the building, for building security. It also is used in some investigations. If there's violence or thefts that have occurred, we have used it for investigations of that nature, but very specific in how we use it. Let's see, did I get all your questions?
Yeah, the last one is fine, but that I sent ahead of time. But thank you so much, Kim. I think it's really helpful because surveillance is a sensitive topic for some community members, and I wanted to make sure like community understood what the purposes were when they see us talking about surveillance equipment and knowing where it's at, and especially the safety piece around it. So thank you so much for that.
Well, one thing I would say is that as our cameras have deteriorated over time, one of the things that we have come up against is that we either have to update it or we have to remove it in its entirety, because there's this expected, if you have it, it has to be functional. So that's where we're at right now, is that it was take it down or revitalize it. If we were, the other thing I wanted to say is if we were in an active threat type of situation, we would partner with the police and they would have access remotely to see what's happening in the I don't ever like to talk about that, but it's a reality that we know would be beneficial.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. I want to ask a follow-up question on that. I checked their website for this vendor, and my understanding their data centers and cameras or surveillance system are end-to-end encryption for any remote access. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. And that's really important to make sure that there is secure access. When it's remote, it's just both ends and no one can be in the middle. So really thank you.
Correct.
Wonderful. Good. I'm good. Any questions or a motion?
Sammy, I have a motion.
What's your motion, Jay?
I move to authorize staff to execute a purchase order with Convergent Technologies for the Corvallis High School video surveillance camera system in the amount of $178,085.
Do I hear a second?
Adams will second.
It's been moved and second. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll enter into a vote. Director Jones, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director Conroy, what's her vote?
Aye.
Director Adams, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director Baker, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director White Bear, what's your vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Finger McDonald, what's your vote?
Aye.
Chair Al votes aye. Passes unanimously. Again, thanks Dale and Kim. Really appreciate your importance and work and commitment. And thank you for bringing those topics and this work and action for us.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it. All right. We have next item on the agenda. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, I was going to skip that. The educational updates. So
You can just skip that.
nope. So we do have an educational update from Ryan, and I want to start with a very important thing I want to say. Ryan and his team are going to present to us an educational update, something that they've been doing for every meeting since the start of this crisis. They've been working hard, tirelessly, and pivoting every possible moment when we need to pivot. So I want to acknowledge that important work, the stable leadership, and the ability to balance between the mandates of the government and the risks of the pandemic and the risks on mental health and social needs for our students and their academic needs. And with that, I'm going to hand it to you, Brian.
Thanks, Sammy. So Melissa and I are going to share tonight an update for you related to the information that was shared with the staff and community just this afternoon. So we were still working on the details of this up till about 4 o'clock today, and then wanted to get the information out. Just a second. Sorry about that. Had a pop up and I wanted to make sure I clicked the right thing. So anyhow, so we wanted to provide you with an update, hot off the presses. Again, recognizing that we have continued to adjust our plan. At the same time, what I want to also highlight is that what we've continued to do is also create a sense of phasing. So when we think about this, we're thinking about the next phase of reopening. We're not making changes over the next couple of weeks. The next couple of weeks have been planned out, have been communicated, and also allow for phasing as we move kids back into school. So as I see it, it's not a modification, it's the next phase moving forward that we'll share with you tonight. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Thanks, Parker. We continue to have student health and safety and well-being as our top priority. As you know, we have been able to make this change or next phase of planning as a result of the guidance that came out from the CDC around the modifications to the square footage requirements for each student. At the same time, I want you to keep in mind that we're continuing to think about this Swiss cheese model, and those other factors of prevention continue to be in place. And so I think it's an important thing for us to continue to recognize and highlight. I appreciate the fact that both Calvin and Kate brought up questions about student safety and communicating to students as they start to come back into our schools, and how important that conversation is going to continue to be with our community, with our students. And I see that as a really important, vital piece of this. And I think Calvin really highlighted it for us as a student returning to school. So Melissa, do you want to take this one?
Sure. We, like Ryan said before, right before spring break, we got information from the CDC that changed their guidance for students in the classroom from 6 feet to 3 feet. And even though that came out, we were all on hold because we have to wait for the Ready School Safe Learners guidance to change from ODE and OHA before we can make any change on our own or even consider that. So that came through during that same time as well. And we started to take a look at what that would mean for us in our district. We also took a look at other things that have been happening in our community, including the number of people in our community who have at least had one shot of the COVID vaccine. And you can see the figures here on in bullet 2, 37% of citizens of Benton County have had their first shot. And that number is just going to continue to grow. In fact, our 16-year-old individuals in the community can get their shot beginning April 19th. So we continue to be ahead of the curve when it comes to timing for vaccinations. We also are really, we're trying to use some different language about what it means to come back to school. It's not returning to what is normal, it's returning to what is familiar. And I've already heard someone, I can't remember, it might've been Sarah or Therese talking about how it's going back to school was a familiar thing for them. The building was familiar. It's not gonna be normal because Vince pointed out this as well. Normal is something that we maybe don't wanna get back to. And we're learning a lot of lessons from our experience in COVID that we want to take into the next few weeks and then into the new school year.
Yeah, one other thing I'd like to highlight as we think about access to vaccine. We've been working, I should say Melissa and her team has been working with the Benton County Health Department to identify ways of providing access to community members, family members who may not be able to get access to vaccine due to some aspects of life. And so we've been working to figure out how to make that happen. We're planning to have a vaccine clinic at Linus Pauling that happens on a Saturday. Our health navigators are able to sign folks up directly on their behalf. And so every time I think we have these conversations, I highlight the support of Benton County Health, but these are other ways that they've continued to say, how do we support the school district and the families of our children in the community, and how can we think differently about access? So I think that's another highlight that I think is important to share, because it does makes a tremendous difference as we continue to roll out access to the vaccine. So for us, what we're moving towards is that on May 3rd, having students, all of our students who are ready to be back in school and able to be back in school on site 4 days a week. We're going to talk a little bit about the schedule and highlight some of the components of it. But as Vince shared, the support for our students in cohort C continues to be a priority for us as well. There are modifications that have had to happen as we think about the resource of time and access to staff, but at the same time, keeping that in mind as we've had these conversations and then the planning. So we're going to take a moment and we're going to look at each 3 of the levels and the schedules that are associated with that level. So we're going to start with elementary. Melissa, do you want to kick us off on that one as Parker pulls it up?
So just like we've said across all levels, our teachers are dedicated to maintaining a connection to cohort C, a group that they've been working with since the start of the school year, and fulfilling a commitment they made to those families that they would be there for those students throughout the year. So this schedule really reflects that and gives our cohort C that opportunity to meet synchronously with their teachers 4 times a week. That's the bottom part of the schedule, but on the top part of the schedule, you see the exciting return to on-site schedule for our students. We're going to ask them to come to school around 8 o'clock in the morning and just have that experience in the classroom with their peers and their teacher throughout the day, building on some academics and also a lot of the lessons that teachers had prepared for the afternoon, the original afternoon hybrid section of their day. We don't want to lose all the planning and work that's gone into that. So teachers are going to be using a lot of that during their school day as well. We are going to be providing snack to our students. And of course, those snack times and physical activity times have to be staggered. Even though students are allowed to be 3 feet apart in a classroom, they have to maintain 6 feet of distance when they're eating. Our teachers, our staff have to maintain 6 feet of distance from the students. And our students still have to walk through the building, line up outside, all of that with a 6 foot distance. So there's a lot of challenges that we're going to have to overcome with that. They're not impossible. It's just something that we need to be to plan for. So imagine buildings creating different kinds of schedules and processes within their building in order to manage snack and recess and those opportunities as well. We'll dismiss students around 1 o'clock and they will go home with a sack lunch so that they can have lunch at home. And then Wednesdays is kind of the continuation of what we've always been doing, which is the virtual whole child specialist classes. And our whole child specialists will be getting together next week to do some planning for what those Wednesdays are going to look like from now until the end of the school year.
Yeah, and so that Wednesday time is also a time that will include cohort C. So students that are in cohort C will also have that time with their peers in that asynchronous way as they've been accustomed throughout the school year. So again, what you'll see in each of these is these balances that we're trying to create, creating additional time in school, but also recognizing some of the things that have been successful, and also accounting for different groups of kids and different needs. Do you want to go to the middle school, Parker? So middle school, with middle school, what you'll see, just kind of keeping in mind that the start times are different for each level. And that is, again, a requirement we need to have based on transportation. I've shared this with you a number of times, so you would all answer it on Jeopardy, but it's basically an hour per level to get kids to and from school. And so that's why these start and end times are different throughout the day. We couldn't start everybody at 8 o'clock, and we couldn't even start half at 8 and half at 9. We have to have 3 periods of time to get kids in to and home from school. So what you'll see again there is that we have Right now, again, because of the way we developed our schedule for the year, we have four periods that are happening this second semester of the school year. Also with cohort C, what you'll see is the way that works at the middle school and also at the high school is that there is a check-in time in the morning for each class, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, first period on Monday, Tuesday, second period, and then on a Wednesday, all four classes. So again, it will require more independence in work for students who are in cohort C. At the same time, we wanted to make sure that that relationship, where possible, is maintained between the teacher and the student. Again, trying to balance access to and creating greater amounts of time in school as we move towards the end of this school year in preparation also for next school year, and at the same time recognizing that cohort C group. The other thing that's just unique to this schedule is the staggering time for lunch for physical distancing. Again, thinking about our comprehensive middle schools and space for students to eat. That's been a theme in our conversations all week with our principals, is making sure that there are enough opportunities and spaces for students to eat. So we've talked about using some of those large tents that you have seen at festivals, so that students have a dry place to eat, but a place that's outside, because we have to expand the number of spaces that kids can use while eating. And also in some of our buildings back at the elementary level, some of those cafeterias are in construction right now. So you will see kids outside eating, also just based on the sheer space we have in that 6 feet requirement. And now we'll look at high school. So high school has a lot of similarities to middle school. The key difference is the start and end times. But again, looking at that 4-period day and also recognizing the connection with that cohort C group. So those two schedules are pretty similar to one another. The elementary has some unique differences in the way that cohort C meets, and also that Wednesday whole child specialist time. And then we'll go back to the slides. Yep. So again, if I was to ask you in Jeopardy, you'd be able to answer this one. And also that these messages were shared with families earlier today. One of the things that we've really tried to do is to always have at least a minimum of a 2-week ramp up in terms of communicating to families before changes have occurred. And so that was why it was important for us to get that information out today. Recognizing May 3rd is 3 weeks away, but there will be some unique changes to the week prior as teachers continue to prepare for students' return. And that's going to be a little different level by level. And so some direct communication will come out from schools by elementary, middle, and high to provide that information to families directly.
This is just a reminder of some of the safety protocols that we will continue, that we've talked about through limited in person. We've talked about it with hybrid, and it will continue as our students come on site and are in full classrooms. Students and staff will wear masks all day during the school day and on the bus. If your student hasn't tried out a mask yet, we would encourage you to try that at home. Actually, though, we're doing really well. Our elementary students, kinder and first grade students came back first, and following that kinder and first grade return to school, we surveyed all of our kinder and first grade supporting staff, teachers, and classified to ask them how things are going with health and safety protocols. And the percentage of students who were able to wear a mask during the school day was high. I think Ryan has a specific number, but I think it was up in the 90% or more of the people that we asked said, yeah, our kids are fine with masks during the day, just kind of that normal nose slippage that a lot of us see as we're walking around town. But it's just an opportunity for all of us to learn. So we'll continue to do masks. And I think the next slide is also a safety one, Parker.
Yep, and we'll continue with physical distancing. I've said it before, and I've heard and read Sammy respond to some people who have reached out to the school board by email with just kind of a clarification that even though students can be 3 feet apart in the classroom, everywhere else they have to be 6 feet apart. So we will continue to follow those safety protocols for physical distancing at school.
One of the other conversations we've had quite a bit of dialogue around has been how much time in between classes. And really what you'll see in those schedules, I think if you went back and looked at them again, is about a 5-minute period of time. That's not to cause kids to rush or panic to get from class to class, but to make sure that we are moving towards the next class rather than spending time socializing in hallways. And so that is something that seems pretty tight in that 5-minute period of time. But at the same time, that may change a little bit based on the discretion of the school. But ideally, it is to get kids moving from location to location safely and as quickly as possible. Yep, this is also something that's outward facing that we'll be sharing with others. And so it's a reminder that for students to bring their devices to school. And one of the things we're working on right now is just making sure we have the chargers we need in some of those pieces as we send those home. So Gil and the technology department are taking that into account in preparation for kids to return. I think Lou shared that earlier about having all those devices out with kids in the community, and we recognize some of those things we're just going to need to continue to have access to at home to charge, but also some options at school as well.
And this does represent a change. During hybrid. We're having students leave all of their personal things at home and not bring their iPad to school. So this does look a little bit different, and we'll talk more about kind of the structures around that and what that means for kids as far as backpacks and snacks and those kinds of things.
Again, one of the things that I don't think can be said enough is how our maintenance staff and custodial staff have helped us to be prepared at each stage of these transitions. I've shared in an email to staff earlier this week just about how sort of my own personal emotions around how these changes and when they've come, and sometimes the frustration that comes with it. And at the same time, our ability to continue to move forward as an organization and as a team. And I think this is a group that really we want to recognize, because they've been in our schools all along, and they've continued to modify and adjust as new information's become available. And they've really, are really helpful in making this happen for our kids and for our community.
We are we've put out a lot of information to our teachers about keeping windows open during the day, increasing that airflow. And I think that Kim has talked about this a lot too, as far as what we've done to improve air filters and ventilation in the buildings, only bringing in outside air. And she even warned staff that it would be a little bit chilly in the buildings when they went back to work, because we do have the outside air flowing, but we are working really hard to increase that ventilation so we can keep our classrooms healthy. And for many of those, any of those rooms, staff can request a look at the air quality report for their workspace if they wanted to take a look at what our facilities team has determined is what's happening in that space. So that's all available to staff through their supervisor.
As well as access to HIPAA filters.
That's right, yeah.
Yep, so we will continue with our grab and go sites. One of the things about that has been that those are oftentimes warm lunches. So I think it's just, again, recognizing that maintaining that the basic need of food and shelter are things that this plan continues to account for and helps us to do.
Another one of those health and safety protocols is we're going to continue to encourage people to wash their hands and use hand sanitizer. We have those stations throughout our buildings all across the district.
So and in conclusion, we decided to welcome our kids back for a greater period of time over a number of days. It's been so exciting to see kids back in schools. We have each taken different schools where we're there at to welcome kids each day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and it's been just a pleasure. And one of the things that you start to see is how well students have learned the routines of being back in school, and how excited everybody has been to be back with us. And I just see this as the next stage of that process, the next phase. And again, I think that as we think about the end of this year, the beginning of next year, sometimes the question comes up about why May and June, why not July, why not September? And I think really for us, it's that we're able to, and our kids have sacrificed a lot over the last year, and our community has done a tremendous job of stepping up and following these rules as a whole. And I think that it's time that we're able to welcome them back and be able to support them as they move through this last couple months of school. It also allows us to think about things like summer school and encourage participation and make those connections with kids and families so that we'll continue to move in that resumption plan. So I'm just really excited to be at this stage tonight and be able to share that with all of you. It's not, there's still a lot of emotion around it. For people, it's not easy because we have continued to pivot and adjust. But this is what I believe to be the final pivot for the school year, and an important pivot it is. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Ryan. And I want to start by saying appreciate your work. And in my view, and this is my observation, that I feel that you're continuing on providing safe, predictable, and stable plan for our communities and students and also staff. So thank you for doing this work. And before we go to questions, I want to highlight an important factor of board governance here. This is not for the school board to make a decision on. It's to be appraised about. While this is a very important and phenomenal decision, one of the most important decisions, I believe, in my view, is making this call at this moment, but it is a superintendent decision for an operational. That being said, I want to highlight the goal number 6 for the Corval School Board in response to COVID-19 as a school district adopt to the new conditions presented by the COVID-19 pandemic, make decisions focused on health and safety, student achievement, equitable systems, and in-person resumption. And the school board provide the oversight and evaluation on how we make those decisions. And I would call out a couple of the strategies that we identified. We're providing ongoing communication with staff, students, and community, just like the one that we are having tonight. And also utilizing resources, federal relief funds, and ways that prioritize health and safety and align with district's instructional priorities. Working with staff and teams and being aligned with the blueprints and requirements and mandates by the state, and identifying and support areas of system development which supports resumption and the next normal. So I want to really thank the board and the district leadership for identifying those goals so we can continue providing our oversight on how those decisions are made. And with that, I'll turn it to our board members for questions. And we have Jay, then Vince, then Sarah, then Therese, then Lou. So Jay.
It's funny, before Jay starts, I just changed my screen because I had you all at the top and I saw no hands raised. And I thought, wow, that is an interesting thing. And I drew it down and every hand was up. I thought
Back to the other view.
Right.
Our hands off today. All right, Jane.
So I have a question and a comment. An elementary teacher, the way I read your schedule, they're responsible for that later in the day contact with the rest of their cohort. Am I thinking correctly?
Yes.
Yeah.
And is the rest of that cohort, are they Zooming to that teacher during the morning or just that one contact in the afternoon?
So it's both morning and afternoon. The morning is kind of the set up the day. This is what our day looks like, kind of get them motivated for what they're going to be doing because they are working on their own. And so kind of getting them, motivated to get going, then saying goodbye, see you at 1:45. And then the elementary teacher will check back in synchronously with those students at 1:45 and give them that synchronous time with the teacher.
I would be curious at some point, not tonight maybe, what would be the typical load of an elementary teacher with how many students are out or Zooming? And I'm just curious. My comment would be, Ryan and Melissa both, I can't imagine how you sleep at night because you have to be being pulled by about 13 different directions. We've all seen plenty of emails from very nice people who are saying, please hurry up and get my child back in school. And we've also seen parents who say, I'm very concerned about the health of my child. We've seen other districts that have jumped a little bit ahead, other districts that aren't. I know you're dealing with the association and what's reasonable and fair. Some of us would be gamblers and have started earlier. Some of us would be hand wringers or however you want to characterize it, and we would not start it at all. So my only comment to anybody that's watching and trying to second guess is I'm just really convinced that the two of you use thoughtful evaluation and hard work to try to pull it together. And it's not, I guess maybe the fact that you're getting pulled in so many ways means probably you're doing it right. If you weren't, you'd have one side totally happy and everybody else would be mad. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jay. Well, just one thing to add to that, a comment of appreciation is that one of the things that we have to look at is the fact that there's close to 7,000 kids in the district, 6,700 kids at 13 buildings, and we're trying to find how best to support each one of those students, recognizing those constraints. Earlier today, I was talking about it in terms of compromise, but I don't know that necessarily compromise is the best word for it, but it is trying to account for all of the different competing needs and interests in this, and keeping safety and students at the center of it. So thanks again. It has been, there have been some sleepless nights.
We also couldn't do this without the leadership team that we work with. Their work has been incredibly invaluable in making all of this happen. So
Yeah,
thanks.
we're not the only ones up all night.
Nope.
Yeah, they have really, they've stepped up and again and again and again. And there have been times that going to the principals one more time and asking, have we thought about how can we consider, has been challenging. And at the same time, they have been, along with all of our staff, really committed to making these pivots and making these changes to help us to move forward.
Thank you, Vince.
So I'm going to start with words of appreciation as well. You can see on our faces that we're really excited to be here, be at this point. But I'm pretty sure that I know myself, and I'm sure my colleagues, we're not surprised because you've been deliberate in executing this phased approach, and getting to this point has always been your goal, because you knew it's what serves children the best. So I'm deeply grateful for having the privilege of actually being in a position where I've gotten to see you and your leadership team and our educators and our classified staff working together, toiling with this, struggling with the details of making this happen with each change. And it's a privilege to serve on this board, to work with such exemplary people that are so committed to children. It's just, the next thing I'd like to talk about, you mentioned the why go now? I think the other reason to go now is because it starts getting us ready for the fall. And I think that's a really important feature of this, is that we've been gone for a long time. We've been out of buildings for a long time. Our kids have been out, our teachers have been out, and we need to learn how to teach in schools again. And we need to learn how to teach in a new environment. We don't know what the fall is going to be like. And so we need to start figuring that out. We need to start figuring that out now. I have a question about around cohort C, and I'm just curious about how much contact time does a kid in Corvallis Online get with a teacher in a day? Is that one touch? Is that a half an hour? Is that an hour? Are they with a teacher for 4 hours a day? I don't have a really good sense of what that's like.
I would say that varies by level, and it also varies by student, based on the needs of that individual kid. But it is a program that's really designed to be fairly independent with check-ins. And so I think that as I think about where we're headed right now with cohort C, I would say that the thing that's different between the two is the curriculum, in terms of the curriculum is aligned with either the online platform or with what's happening in that classroom at the school level. The other difference is that connection between who the teachers are. The Corvallis Online teachers are teachers in our school district, so it's still a CSD connection, but it's not, and it's the teacher that those students have been with all year, while cohort C is with the teachers those kids have been with all year. So I think that right now, sort of maybe the question behind your question is that those two experiences are more similar than they were, that they will be more similar as of May 3rd than they were the majority of the school year.
Right. And I mean, you addressed the underlying question. I mean, parents looking at this schedule are going to go, wow, we're in cohort C. We're not going to get a lot of contact time. But they may not be aware that the Corvallis Online kids and kids attending online academies all over Oregon are able to thrive in those environments. They just need to learn to work independently. And so you just touched on what I was assuming, or was the thought process there, is that there's some convergence around those two groups of students.
Yeah, and the other thing that we've talked about around cohort C is that there may be students who need to join cohort C if there's a situation of a quarantine. And so for those classes and those students, for teachers to be thinking about them as kids who may be coming back to be with them at any point in time over that 6-week period of time. We also anticipate that some of the students in cohort C, as more students come back into school and families become more comfortable with that option, that we'll see more students return as well. And so as I think about that cohort C group, the continuity of learning really needs to line up with what's happening in classrooms so kids can come and go if necessary. And with Corvallis Online, those students have sort of independence in that curriculum in terms of timing of instruction and some of those pieces, but there's already continuity built into that product with those constraints and considerations in mind.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah, and then Teresa, Lou, and Tina. Sarah?
I have a number of questions. I'm going to ask two of them, I think. One is, continuing to think about cohort C, in addition to having less contact time with teachers, are they going to ever have any contact time with their classmates who are now in classrooms? Because so far they've been Zooming with class meetings that are the whole class, and I worry about them now getting cut off from their classmates in addition to their teachers. And then my other question is about teachers and what kind of support we're giving to them. As you know, once again, they're changing what they're doing to teach our kids. And we have to reconfigure classrooms. I imagine that we're 6 feet apart now or 3 feet apart. And how are we giving them the resources and time they need to adjust to the new schedule?
I can speak to the first question and maybe Ryan can pick up the second question. So as far as the cohort C, middle school and high school, they are only going to be they're going to be connecting just with the other students that are in cohort C that are in those class periods. So that I think is going to be a little bit of a loss for them. With our elementary, we talked a lot in our little elementary bargaining team in the last 2 days about what we can do to help them remain connected to the classroom community. And Jay was asking about that, as they're check-in in the morning and the afternoon. There's a hope that the check-in in the morning, as we get more adept at being in the classroom with all these students, is there an opportunity for, literally just kind of having the computer like this, an assistant showing everybody, look, your friends are on this, on this screen, and here's the rest of the class. But beyond that, yeah, that's going to be something that they're going to have to contend with for those last 6 weeks of school.
And then to your other question, I think that so that's why we're having individual conversations at different levels that are coming to families about that week prior to. And then if you think about the high school and some of the transitions that are happening this week and next week, those times are really are intentional for staff for preparation and planning for students to come back. Also, some of the time on Wednesday will continue to be planning and preparation time even through those 6 weeks. So those are some things that we have worked through to make sure that there is support there. The other thing about classroom configuration, that's one of the things that Kim and her team have been out looking at spaces and measuring spaces and thinking about that. As you think about some of the requirements, it does require our classrooms to look a little different. So students facing in the same direction, 3 feet. In our elementary schools, you oftentimes see like pods of 4 desks, and they're all facing each other. Those things we have to change. And so tomorrow, Kim and her team will be meeting with the elementary principals and the middle and high school principals and looking at a room and the configuration and getting some feedback on that, because that is one of the things that we'll have to be modifying and changing over the next couple of weeks. We're starting with 6th and 9th grade classrooms because those are the classrooms where kids are coming back. That's the group to phase in next Monday. So those conversations and that plan is underway now, but there's still a lot of work to do around it. And that's again one of those areas for recognition for our custodial and our maintenance teams to make that possible.
All right. Therese, and then Lou, and then Tina. Therese.
Okay, let's see. I'm kind of going down my list of questions in order of what's already been asked. Here's one that has not been asked. Lunch. So I'm thinking about not having lunch until 1 o'clock. And then I'm thinking about the people that are having to be transported home to eat lunch. And I'm thinking about what I turn into when my lunch is 10 minutes late. Now I'm a mostly regulated adult. And so do we have a plan for when that does not pan out? Like when the kids rip into their lunches on the bus, or I see that not working quite as planned. So what are your thoughts about that?
So we talked a lot about that for elementary, because that is a big deal. And I want to point out, first of all, the amazing teachers that we have who understand that a trauma-informed lens with their classroom means that when a child is hungry, they get to eat. And so knowing that that's going to happen, and that needs to be a flexible thing that happens throughout the school day, which is going to be from 8 to 1. We have places set up outside of the classroom that are areas where students can take a mask break. So they're outside of the classroom, they can take off their mask, and then put their mask back on and come inside. There were ideas about using that same space as a quick snack break. And some students are already doing that in the hybrid model in the elementary school. And then when it gets to time for that sack lunch to be handed out, I think that that's going to be a building by building planning and conversation. Just in talking to one principal, we were discussing the idea of, if a student gets that sack lunch, maybe, if the bus comes at 1, maybe the kids don't walk out of the classroom until, or they walk out of the classroom, earlier, like at 12:45, and they get their lunch and they have 15 minutes to eat that lunch outside under a tent before the bus is available and ready to take them home, knowing that many of our kids get on a bus for, 20, 30 minutes and sometimes up to an hour. So there's no way we're going to not let our kids eat, because that's incredibly important. We know that.
Thank you for saying that. I'm appreciating the references to trauma informed, and I love that if a kid needs to eat, that we're prepared that needs to happen.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about the other side of that trauma informed practice, where we make sure that the kids feel empowered to be able to advocate for themselves.
Okay.
Are we ready to tell them, if you need this, it's okay to need this, and we're ready to support you? And are our staff prepared to check in with kids who might look like they have that need, but might not feel comfortable asserting their need? It concerns me, because I know that, food insecurity is a significant issue in our community. So just wanting to make sure that we're prepared to support the kids who are going to tear their sack lunch open without asking, and we're prepared for them, and the ones that are going to be very hesitant to open it because they've been told that lunch is at whatever time, that we just have good communication around that. So that's my, I'm just going to pass it to someone else now, because I have a lot of questions on here, but I bet other people have the same ones. And if there's anything left on my list afterward, I'll throw myself back in the ring.
Okay.
Thanks, Therese. Lou, and then Tina.
Okay, so I appreciate all the work that's gone into all the planning, and you all have had to juggle so many things. And I also need to be realistic on how this looks for cohort C. And I feel like this is the first time for the whole time that we've been having these conversations where I don't feel like students are being super supported, if that makes sense. Because I understand Vince's question earlier about, like, there was already students doing this on their own, but the cohort C students are used to support. They're not used to doing it on their own. And I have a lot of concerns for younger students in particular. I think older students might be okay because of being a little bit more independent, but I'm thinking about, like, my 3rd grader who is in cohort C. There's no way she's going to do her work on her own all day. And so I'm like gonna, as a parent, have to navigate that. And I'm thinking about students whose parents may not be able, or adults in their home may not be able to be as right there to make sure they're doing that, if that makes sense, because they're having meetings and stuff online, or they're working outside the home. And so I'm just a little bit concerned about the loss of connection, for one, because they are used to seeing their peers on the computer. And I actually have concern about having the camera face in the classroom, because I think that'll amplify that sense of loss. Because I already hear from, this is speaking on my own experience, but I know I'm not alone in this experience. So I want to preface that of hearing my own child say, like, it's not fair, I don't get to go back to school, and knowing and hearing her friends prep with the teachers and stuff like that. And I know there's a sizable number of cohort C's just in her class. And so I'm just a little bit concerned about that. And I don't know what the answer is. And you all don't have a magic wand to make the pandemic go away. But I just really want cohort C families to know that that's recognized, and that I don't know what the answer is to help with that loss of connection, for one, but also the instruction time is completely almost gone. There's like no instruction time except for the 1 hour in the afternoon, and that's really a check-in. for the elementary age students, and the Wednesday times for the full student support is already not live. There's activities for them to do. And so this is very elementary based feedback. It's not like middle and high, because I know that's a whole different ball game, but it's just the independence level is not the same with younger students. And I'm thinking like kindergarten, first, second, third, and up. Like the younger they get, the less independent they are for this learning. So I don't know what we can do as a district to better support those younger students that are going to be feeling it, especially the disconnect from their peers that they're used to at this point, and the teachers. They're bonding with their teachers.
What I can tell you is there isn't, we have not figured out the perfect solution for this either. And I heard you say that, and I know you're not asking me for it. So to be fair, what I will share with you is that has been a concern that has been brought up by our principals. It's been brought up through our negotiation process. It comes up often and frequently, and what that says to me is that it's important, and we're going to continue to work at it. And it won't be a perfect solution when we get there, but it's important to a lot of people, and that just kind of gives me some hope about how it will turn out and how it will play out. And again, I recognize it's not going to be perfect.
And I'm not trying to cause you all less sleep, because I know, but I already know this is already on your mind. I'm families to like know that this is recognized, because I think when it's rolled out, it's like, okay, cool. Well, they can do it on their own, and other students do it. And I think it's important that we send a message as a district that we know that there actually is a little bit of a disconnect with that cohort C, because it can't be this, we can't replicate that. And there's not, I don't think there's a way that you can at this point with the, with how many students are going back in the capacity of teachers. And so respecting and supporting the teachers too, and their hours and how much time they're already putting in over it. I think it's such a hard balance, and I don't know, I just want families to feel supported right now, is all. Because I'm sure this is a huge, when I got it, I know I was like, well, what are they going to do all day? I was like, oh, wait, they're going to do it on their own. It made sense after I reread it, but yeah. So thank you for just hearing the comment. And
yeah.
Thank you. Tina?
So Lou has already addressed my concerns about cohort C, and thank you, Ryan, for letting us all know that that's on everybody's mind and the communication is there. And that's it. That's all the only concern I really had.
Thanks, Tina.
Thank you, Tina. I want to say probably we're getting close to the end of, actually we are 15 minutes beyond the time allocated for this. So I want to say, Therese, if you don't mind, we'll conclude if that's okay. And please be sure to send questions or any follow-ups to Ryan and Parker, so we can address them. Is that okay with you? Wonderful. I got thumbs up virtually. And I want to conclude by thanking you, Ryan, Melissa, our associations. I'm really grateful to be part of a district and a community where there's this trust and confidence that we all care about the kids and the community around us. Those who work at the district, our staff, classified staff, and certified staff, and administrators, everybody is putting their intention and their focus to do the work and make things happen. And I want to reiterate Ryan's statements that we should continue putting our masks on and also washing our hands and getting the vaccines if we're eligible and we can get them, so we can protect the community. And now there is another bonus, which is allow the kids to have more in-person instructional time as much as possible. And we need to continue doing that. And to maintain that and to maintain that stability, it takes a village, it takes the whole community. So again, thank you, Ryan.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I look forward for May 3rd.
Yeah, me too.
It's really exciting.
Me too. Absolutely.
Yes, and quick shout out for Ritz. I know you've been sitting on the very long hours of negotiation time as a liaison for us on the board. So thank you for doing that work.
It's truly been a pleasure.
All right, with that, I'll move to adoption of board meeting schedule for 21-22. And this item is for a discussion for this adoption. So any discussion or a motion? Or questions? Vince?
So our colleague Therese brought up, made an eloquent statement that highlighted that our calendar often is not, culturally competent. And I'm just wondering, have we vetted these dates against, religious and cultural observances across the year to ensure that, we're treading as lightly as we can and trying to be as inclusive as possible.
Absolutely. And I'll add one thing, and I believe there might be some follow-up actually from staff as well. After hearing from a constituent about the conflict of the early hours of this meeting with Yom HaShoah that's concluded by the sundown of today, I consulted with the rabbi about the proposed schedule to find out if there's any conflicts that are important for the Jewish community. So that was one outreach that we did following that. And is there any other things that we learned since then?
The only other considerations are, what I would just ask you if there was anything that stood out to you throughout this year of scheduling, because they have pretty much been the same dates from previous years. So unless you've had feedback from the community, I think we're still in good standing.
Jay?
I don't remember the specific conflict with a Christian holiday. Maybe it was Holy Thursday. I don't remember what the specific one, but what hit me with our constituents' comment about today's celebration of remembrance is I would urge the calendar person, whoever that group of people are, that they would have a contact with members of those religious communities that we have in our community, and then add to it other suggested communities that need to be talked to before because my impression is our meetings are somewhat flexible on the Thursday that we decide. We don't always meet on the first and third that I can figure out. So maybe there's ways that a person could, as part of putting this together, make 3 or 4 or 6 phone calls and say, we're circulating to you our tentative list. Would you please give us the days that would conflict? It's just kind of fail safe and lots to think about.
So that would be something that we could do between the first and second. We can bring this back again, having done that. One of the things I wanted to highlight for you, Jay, based on the questions that you've had or brought up for us, was around that July 1st board meeting. The concern you had about a board elections prior to July 1. And so I wanted to make sure that I'm sure you were well aware of that, but we did schedule it for noon on July 1st in order for that, with the specific goal of board elections.
Yeah.
I think that.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think that takes care of the issue of statute saying when should an organizational meeting take place, and also the concern about, do we have someone on board who can do signing or whatever. The other options included other boards coming up with an alternative representative that carries over from that's a member who doesn't run for election and have to stand. But if people can meet at noon on July 1, that sounds like a great solution.
just for clarity for fellow board members at the community, historically, the board has elected to have an organization meeting before July 1st for board chair and vice chair. And then the first business meeting after July 1st, and sometimes that's months afterwards when the new, if there is a new board member sworn in involved in that meeting, you will reaffirm the decisions prior. So that's what was done historically. And now we're opting in not to schedule an organization meeting before July 1st. And on July 1st, we would have that election based on this proposed schedule. So just to be transparent and clear about that proposal.
So we'll go ahead and do some additional vetting and bring it back to you at the next meeting.
Sounds good. All right.
Anything else about it?
Lou and Therese.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why I can't see the hands.
They kicked you off of the co-host, Ryan. Just kidding. My only comment was, our question was like, some things aren't listed on calendars. And so like, do we have a process with communities that may not have things that are listed on calendars that are easily accessible? Because I know you can look some stuff up. Like after we received that email, I double checked this calendar to make sure I don't want to mispronounce the day of remembrance that today is. But just to double check that that one didn't conflict, but not everything's as Googleable. Yeah. As that, I don't know if we have a plan in place where we can reach out perhaps to community members somehow or do a call out or something.
I would be interested in hearing from board members, which if there are communities that they are wanting to make sure we reach out to. And again, I know that that's not all encompassing, but if there's a specific experience you've had or connection you've had that would help us to be able to do that well, I think that would be good information for Parker to have.
Can it be like in one of the update emails that this calendar is being considered and have a deadline date to provide feedback, perhaps?
Mm-hmm. And I know that sometimes that's not always the most effective way of communicating with some communities, and that's probably then. So that's sort of, I guess, my my question in that was that component.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, just so you know, some of the things that our leaders are involved in throughout the year that we try to work around as well, in terms of conferences or events or activities. And so that's another consideration that we take into account.
Okay. Therese?
So I'm sorry, Lou, were you gonna say something? I thought somebody was gonna. Okay. So a couple thoughts. One, I'm really glad we're having this conversation. I think it's really important that we've seen a way in which our meetings might not be as accessible as we want them to be. And so I'm really glad that we're talking about what we can do about that. A couple thoughts. One is, since we're talking about meetings being accessible, is there a reason from a statute perspective why the meetings have to be on the same day of the week like we always have them on Thursdays? Does it have to be that way? Are we doing that because it's easier for scheduling? If we needed to work around something that was important to work around, and we also needed to be able to have a meeting in that time, can we move it to a different day? Is my question. And also considering that some people who participate in more rigid scheduling, shift work, perhaps, and with more rigid schedules, and then don't ever have Thursdays off, then never get to participate. I love that we have been streaming these meetings. And so are we going to continue to do that to increase accessibility? But I just think that in addition to the dates of our meetings, also considering that having a traditional dinner hour meeting on a weeknight is still something that is really specific to the only particular groups of people are going to consistently be able to make that a priority. And maybe since we're thinking about this, we might also consider that it doesn't have to be that way. Not asking us to solve that tonight, just putting that out there. And then the last thing is, I love that we want to include people that will be on the board in board leadership decisions. I do not fully understand the rationale beside in deciding today that we're going to have that meeting on July 1st at noon when we do not know who the board members will be. And so we do not know that that solves our problem of that meeting being accessible to them. I wonder, I think I understand the spirit behind wanting people that are actually going to be serving on that board to be making a decision about who its leadership will be. But it just feels a little arbitrary to say in April when board members have not been confirmed who that board is actually going to be, that this is the day that we're going to elect the leadership for it. So I just want to put that out there. I'm not sure that's the best way to handle that decision. Since, you know, it's not going to be that long from now before we will know who the board members will be. And so that's all.
Yeah.
I think we're problem solving something that's not a problem yet.
Yeah, not to deliberate a lot, Therese, on this. Maybe actually, probably this is the time to deliberate on it. But I would say for the second part of your statement or question, July 1st was a date that's is proposed because it's the first day of the year and needs some continuity of board leadership by the conclusion of the June 31st. So that would be really important. And now that makes me wonder if you lack a quorum on that date, then you might not have board leadership at all by then. And that's another risk. So this is a common practice I've heard from multiple boards where they don't do an organization meeting before the beginning of the year, but then they will hold it on a lunchtime on July 1st. I'm open to hear if the board members have different suggestions, or that proposal of not having an organization meeting before July 1st is something that you wish not to proceed with. So I'll open it up if you want to deliberate on that. Therese, and then Vince, and then Jane.
No, I'm sorry. I just didn't put my hand down. I think I've raised the question. I'm curious to hear what other people have to say.
Thank you. Really good question, Vince, and then Jane.
So it's funny, I answered a related question today. It was a 5-member board where 4 members are going to be gone. And how do you reorganize a board when you only have 1 member? The answer is that under Robert, swearing in organizational meetings, is largely silent. There's no statutory requirement. So really the board can convene an organizational meeting at the beginning of its first business meeting and conduct the business of determining leadership. Any member carrying over, if board chair and vice chair leave the board, any member can serve as chair pro tem as needed to sign documents at the direction of the board. That's under policy. I could dig it up for you, but it's not as complicated as we necessarily think it is. You just need a person to serve as chair pro tem to do any of the administrative work between July 1st and the first, or when the organizational meeting occurs. So say, for instance, your chair is not in the seat anymore, the vice chair would then be the chair pro tem until the organizational meeting. If both leave, then you just appoint a chair pro tem as needed.
Thanks, Vince. Jay?
Vince, I've looked at our policy and I've looked at a number of other districts. Other districts have that very wording you just used. In the absence of a chair carrying over, the vice chair shall serve. So we could come up with that wording. You seem to think like there was another just general statute or something that allows for that. So that would maybe be an answer. And I think what Therese is raising is the question of the problem that we don't know is what day in July will there ever be predictable that we could have an organizational meeting? So I know you do the best you can and you name a day, or I don't know, maybe in June, does a board have the authority to reschedule that July meeting? I don't know. We may be working too hard at something that we just don't have any control over. Who's going to be available on July 1?
All right, so with the limitation of time, I'm gonna check in with you. Therese, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I agree. I really, I like Vince's, I like the proposal that Vince, or I don't know if he's making a proposal. I like that information that he shared with us as a reasonable solution that also, for the most part, ensures that at least somebody who has their feet under them about being on the board and has an established pattern of communication with the district office is the person that we would be relying on in that period of time, if we can. So I think it would be ideal if we just could come up with something that we just can do and say, this is what we're going to do. And then move forward with that. And I like the idea of not rushing a meeting for the sake of having a meeting when we have another viable option to us.
Okay, so let me check in now with what I feel is the consensus is. Number one, we'll table this schedule for consideration, further consideration by staff, and check in with any potential conflicts. And number two is that gets more information about language that could provide a provision for a vice chair or chair pro tem in the absence of a chair or a board leadership. And depending on that, we'll either retain the July 1st or not. So we'll have a proposal regarding that July 1st. But the sentiment is, yeah, I think that's the consensus. Is there any objection of my summary? Wonderful. With that, let's move on to a consolidated action. As a reminder, the items under this portion of the agenda are for action: the minutes, license to personnel action, and budget parameters for readoption. Does anyone have a question about anything in consolidated action? Seeing none, does anyone wish to make a motion?
I move to accept the items in consolidated action.
Is there a second? Second by Vince. All right. Those in any discussion? Director Adams?
Aye.
Director Conroy?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Baker?
Aye.
Director Whitebear?
Aye.
Vice Chair Finger McDonald?
Aye.
Chair Alatropo votes aye, passes unanimously. All right. And consolidated information, no non-licensed personnel information and February financial statements unaudited. As a reminder, the items under this portion of the agenda are for discussion. Would anyone like to discuss any item on consolidated information? All right, we have Jay, Lou, Sarah, and Vince. Jay?
I'm sorry, no, I don't.
No worries, Lou?
I had my hand up for the last one, but not to pull anything, just to say thank you for the revisions to the budget parameters. It was just a thank you that I wanted to make sure was acknowledged.
Awesome, thanks. And Sarah?
Yeah, I actually have a question about the non-licensed personnel information, and it's just one of the positions. The mental health and wellness skills trainers that are in the district office, are those in addition to the, I was just curious where they fit in with our mental health program that we've developed.
Yeah, the skills trainers work with therapists. They're typically two people working together as a pair. So the therapist as well as the skills trainer, and they're assigned to two buildings. Those pairs or duos are, and that's how that kind of that relationship's built.
Okay, I think I was confused because it said the building was district office and rather than a school. So okay, that clarifies that.
Multiple buildings.
Any, Vince?
Mine is on the financials, and I'm just curious. I noticed that Amazon.com credit services came up a few times, and I'm just curious what that is. I came up in the general fund, district donation fund, the student body fund, and I'm just curious what we use Amazon.com credit services for.
I can't speak to the specifics, but it's probably just generally supplies and materials, although you can buy pretty much anything on Amazon. So it could be all kinds of things.
So that's what it is. It typically comes up as consumable supplies and materials. There was library books as well. So that's what it is. We're buying stuff on Amazon.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, thanks. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Olivia, I have financials question as well. In general terms for the for our general fund, do we feel that we're going to be on budget or under budget, given the recent decisions around reopening? Is there any significant financial disruption?
Our general fund projections haven't changed over the last couple of months significantly. Most of the costs associated with reopening our schools are being funded through one of the three federal stimulus allocations we've been awarded. So there isn't really any impact to the general fund on new or additional costs related to reopening at this time.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, I want to open it for board member comments, and I'll start with a check-in for a possible agenda item, which is related to the scholarship promise scholarship program. And there's two questions I want to ask. Number one, I sent you an email asking for topics, if we would apply for next year, what topics you would be interested in. And number two, if you have any preference between half program or full program, or leave it to the discretion of board leadership, depending on the agenda and the load for next year. So let's start with the first question, and I want to acknowledge Vince sent me a suggestion around community engagement and equity as one of the topics we could propose for the scholarship program. Is there any suggestions or any thoughts about that? Sarah, Lou, and MJ. Oh, I'm sorry. I probably have other stuff to talk about. So
yeah, I had other stuff to talk about, but I also have a thought on a subject. I think I agree with Vince that continuing the work on community engagement is important. We keep putting that on our list of things to work on, and I still think we have a lot of work to do there. The other thing that immediately comes to mind that I think is something the community is going to want to know about will be how we are supporting our students and learners as we resume what will be the new normal of school next year, and how we are, I think the sort of understanding of where our students are and how we address the needs that become obvious as we reopen our schools is something that I think is a topic the community might be interested in.
Wonderful, thank you. Lou and Jay. Lou?
I just left my hand up for later. I like the topic too that was already proposed. And I'm thinking about other areas that we could grow as a board, as well as around like serving students that are from houseless populations and stuff like that. Areas that have to do with equity but are really specific. So instead of the broad, like how do we, and like coming up with community engagement plans. So it's not like just community engagement, like something really specific. That was what I was thinking about when you said those.
Wonderful. Jay and Vince for later topics.
No, I was interested in how a board versus a superintendent, or in lieu of a superintendent, handles growth and improvement in unbelievably tough times. It kind of fits with Sarah's comment. We're not going to be the only one in this country, that's going to have to be wrestling with how to support staff, students, parents, when you're trying to A, assess where are our kids, B, what's a reasonable level of growth over the next 1 to 4 years. In other words, it's the whole process of recalibrating, measuring and recalibrating your approach. I think that's just going to overwhelm us, and to know the right role of a board versus, trust me, I'm the superintendent and my crew, we know how to get kids back on track if they are off track, which again, I think that's an area of study and kind of keeping in our own lanes that would be really helpful.
Thank you. Really good. Any other thoughts on this and that subject? So the next check-in is, oh, yeah, Vince, sorry.
Well, I was just going to speak to what I was thinking when I said equity by community engagement. And I think Lou kind of touched on it, was really taking, this board is really good at knowing that community engagement is important, but we most often give that to the district to do. And then we hear back. It's not us as board members going into the community, having firsthand analog, very deep conversations with our constituents. And that's kind of what I was alluding to. So we're doing good work around equity, Lou. I think you're absolutely right that we need to diversify our equity work. You can tell it's getting late. But I think that this board we need to change the culture of this board. We have heard time and again that we are not available, that we are unassailable. And so I think we need to start breaking that culture and pushing ourselves to be out in the community.
Thank you, Vince. All right, with that, the second check-in is whether we should have half a program like what we did this year, or a full program like we did in previous years. So if you have a very strong preference, Vince, could you state your conflict of interest?
Yes, I'm an employee of OSBA, and I conduct scholarship programs, and I understand the program really well. But I wouldn't materially benefit from this because I'm not the trainer for the Corvallis School Board. So one of my colleagues is the trainer. So I don't have a conflict of interest here. That said, I want to advocate for a full program because it would it could embed some of the elements that Jay brought up. How do we grapple with these new topics? How do we, grapple with the new normal? And how do we embed that into our community engagement work? And how do we do that with an equity lens? And so I think if we go with a half program, I don't think we're going to get enough of our trainers' time to check all those boxes. And we're lucky that we have a trainer that likes us a lot.
I agree. I see thumbs up. All are in agreement. We should advocate for a full program if possible. So the next step would be I'll be working. Yes, go ahead, Vince.
The other point is that gets us $5,000 in scholarship money to give out. So the more we do, the more we get to give away.
And that money comes to the students. It gets awarded to the students. Sarah?
I think one thing we need, I agree with that. One concern I have is that when we do these trainings, we are taking time out of our agendas. And I would imagine that in the next year, we are going to have issues that need our attention because of the state of the world we're living in. I feel like if we're going to advocate for a full training, I think we all need to be cognizant of the idea that may also require potentially more meetings and how much staff time that will take on.
Okay. Thank you. So in summary, I'll meet with you, Sarah, and Ryan and Parker, and we'll draft an application for consideration. And OSBA requires the board to sign off on it. So we'll bring it for an action before we submit it sometime within the year. So really, thank you. This is really good. Sorry for taking that much time from the comments. So let's go for Lou, then Vince, then Sarah. All right, that's Lou and then Sarah.
I think Sarah was first.
Go ahead, Lou.
Okay. I just wanted, sorry to keep harboring on this. I just wanted to make one more comment about cohort C. And I was reflecting on my own words and feel like some of what I may have said may have sounded dismissive to our middle school and high school students that are in cohort C. And I didn't want to come across in that way. I just want to make sure that's clear, that I understand that they're also losing hours with that interaction with their peers and their teachers, and that they're supported as well. And I think it's just important for me to self-correct myself to the public if I came across that way. And that was not my intention, but I understand intention versus impact. So if I did, if that did come across that way to any students, I do apologize and know that you're supported as well. And I understand that those hours mean a lot to you as well. My comment is more about being able to navigate your time a little bit better than younger students may be able to. And so that's more what the focus was. But I just wanted to make that comment to our middle school and high school students. And also, I know that it's not a federal or local designation, but the State Department did declare this month as Arab American History Month. And so I just wanted to recognize that. And we may not have it here locally, but hopefully in the future we do. But since this, the State Department did make that declaration a couple months ago, or days ago, it's late, sorry. A couple of days ago, I did want to say happy Arab American History Month to our Arab American community members and families and staff and members. And I also wanted to recognize that it is also Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and wanted to just send a special message of support and love to any fellow survivors in our community, especially students, staff, and administrators. And so know that you're loved and supported as well. And yeah, that was all.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, I want to thank Ryan for the efforts of the district working with the public health department to increase. I've got a 15-year-old making a lot of noise in the background. I apologize. To increase availability and accessibility to vaccines. I got my second shot today. My son will turn 16 next week, so we will sign him up as soon as possible. I want to encourage our community to take advantage of the miracles of science and get vaccinated, because following the health protocols and wearing your mask and getting vaccinated are what will make bringing back students safe for everyone in the community. So it's a really important thing that we can do to support our kids. Yeah, so go get your shots.
Thank you, Sarah. Jay?
Sammy, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you again for the tone of the discussion on vaccines and getting kids back into school. Our community has been very civil, but very passionate about their positions. And it's nice to have good, open discussions without divisive rhetoric. My other comment is a little more detailed because it deals with a letter you sent us regarding a statute proposed regarding board assessing themselves and working on a plan for education for themselves. And my question, if I have it right, I read it real quickly, and you were among a number of people who worked on it. Its focus is about boards needing to, by law, assess their level of understanding of their role, I think, and then propose a plan for how they're going to address the maybe needs. And it focused, I believe, check me, on equity and one other item. Can you help me out, Sammy? What are the two focuses of that assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. And this, you're referring to Senate Bill 334. I believe now there's an amendment number 2, so 334-2. And the focus of the Senate bill is to require school boards and leadership, so including superintendents and charter boards, to do training on equity. I believe in other topics as well related to best practices on board governance.
Yeah.
And am I missing anything else? So maybe Vincent, Ryan. I think these
Those are the
highlights.
two key themes.
And if I would, sorry, Jay. If I would
So
yeah, go ahead.
My question would be, first of all, I was struck as a political scientist that this is the state of Oregon telling local school boards what they need to study. That's interesting. There may be some, I don't know. I'm a little concerned. I was told back in 1993 that we all needed to have SIM and CAM certificates, and that's one I beat to death. Right? Sometimes the state doesn't have all the wisdom. But my second question would be, if you took a poll of school boards and said, what are the things you all need to know more about? Equity would be a good one. Governance, what's the right role of a school board would be a good one. And I know we have those opportunities at state meetings. I could probably name 3 more, including finance, educational success or achievement. So I'm a little nervous that mandate might not be broad enough to really take on what boards need to know. So I'm just raising a question because you're a person that's in that group. So thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Really well, really points were very well taken, and I'll bring that feedback to the team that's working on it, including Morgan Allen from COSA. One thing I would highlight from the bill, as I understand it, is they require boards, and almost, in my opinion, almost everything that the bill requires is something we've done so far. With the exception, they built a timeline that is 120 days to accomplish some of the deliverables. But one of the things that they say is that you need to document actually, so there's an extra work to document a plan for your professional development and say, I think every other year, say, this is what I want to work on. So you could say maybe one board would say we need to do more training on finance or how to read budgets, etc. That's how I understand it. But I took your points really well. So basically adding flexibility to boards to define what professional development should look like for them in terms of other topics as well. Is that right?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, I want to say thank you for, again, a successful and productive evening. Board members, you care and you're passionate and you care about what's best for the kids. And that makes our work fun, enjoyable, hard, and tough. And I'm glad that we're working with people who are making very tough decisions, difficult decisions. But we know that they're putting the kids first, and that makes our work enjoyable and worth it. So with that, have a wonderful rest of your evening. The meeting is adjourned. Oh,